Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. This is the inter-regional dialogue session, and we're going to talk about exchanges on the regional and national IGFs. Let me introduce Marlene Cade, who with me will be are the leaders or co-organizers of these sessions. But most importantly, I want to introduce the team that have been make this happen. We have Christina Reed from the government of Egypt, and
haven't sort of coordinated the Chengetai, what we would say, but from my part, I am very encouraged with the proliferation, in a very positive sense, proliferation of IGF initiatives, which means that the concept and the approach is the right one that we're advocating for and pursuing. And therefore, we are very pleased with your presence here, and we hope that this dialogue that you will be engaging in exchanging your experiences will be fruitful and useful for the next period that all of us hope will be decided either this year or latest December next year by the UN General Assembly. I think that we heard very clearly messages from the Net Mundial meeting, where community was discussing possible ways forward, and one of the issues that is recommended was to think about the linkage between different initiatives, being national, regional, and international, that we would create kind of a ongoing, permanent engagement throughout the year, which would be cross-fertilizing and self-supporting each other. And in this respect, I think it is very timely for you to consider the modalities of that process and bring your thinking, your proposals to the main plenary in stock-taking session, that we learn in which way you're thinking. From my part, of course, I have some ideas, but not being perceived as being prescriptive. I will sort of keep my ideas for myself, and will be verifying them along the way of discussion as it evolves, because at the end of the day, the preparations for the next IGF will be done as usually by the MAG in cooperation with host country, in consultation with the wider community through existing mechanisms, open consultation process. Initial thinking is that we would have the first open consultation meeting maybe prior the end of the year, simply because IGF this year is taking place early in the year, and not to postpone it too far, because traditionally the first
Thank you, Jonas. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me here, and I personally am very pleased of the proliferation of the regional and national IGF initiatives. It really shows that the multi-stakeholder model is growing, and it is important, and it is being accepted. From my point of view, and also I would also, looking at the agenda, I think it is a very good agenda, and I am very interested in how the regional and national IGFs can contribute to the global IGF debate, and I think they should, because they are representatives of the grassroots level as well. And I think it shouldn't just be one direction, it should be both direction, and we should be, we should reinforce each other. One thing I'd also like to mention is that, and I think it's very good that we know that one size does not fit all. There are slight differences in each regional and national IGF, and it is important that we do follow the main principles of an IGF, that is openness, inclusiveness, and that anybody can join and discuss and have their views heard at the regional and national level as well. And to this, I also invite those of you who have not sent the information to the IGF Secretariat so that we can put your information on our website, because somebody might be wanting to start an IGF in a country near you, or in your same country, but they don't know the information, so they know who to contact. And also, if you could just bring some information on your structure, because I think the structures are also very important, so that somebody who wants to start a regional IGF or a national IGF can look at the structures that are out there and see which one best suits them, and maybe slightly modify it to suit the national needs. We've also been discussing things about funding for regional and national IGFs. I was at the meeting with Friends of the IGF website. We're just discussing website issues, and we were planning to have facilities that regional and national IGFs can have a website or a section of a IGF website where they can maintain, they have access to listservs, etc., because there is some overhead involved in this, and if we pull all our resources together, you can have your own section there and people know where to go to get the information. At the IGF Secretariat, I don't know if you're all aware of this, but we also offer our WebEx, so if you want remote participation, you just contact us and we will give you a virtual room, how many you need for your meetings, and we're quite pleased to host that. I think that is part of what we can contribute to the national and regional debates. There was also a talk about funding, and there are some various associations, the Friends of the IGF Association, and there's also the Tides Foundation, which are being set up now, and with a hope that we will they will be able to give funding to the regional and national IGFs as needed, and this, of course, this is depending on contributions, but they are set up for that, because the current IGF trust fund that is run by UNDESA is not set up to do that, so we can take some of that money to sponsor the national and regional IGFs. And I will keep quiet now, because I think it is more important to hear other people speak than me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chengetai, for your words, and especially for the finances announcement. That sounds very interesting for not only establish national and regional IGF, but especially for the different initiatives that are planning to start, and in some cases, they just need a little funding to start it with. Thank you so much. I want just to finish introducing the rest of the team. So I want to introduce Laura Hutchinson, who will be one of our rapporteurs, and Sandra Hofrichter. That's fine, more or less. Okay, thank you. And Jan-Liz Lee, who will be our remote moderator and Twitter moderator. We're going to try this, and she had help us to define the hashtag for this session is going to be hashtag IGF initiatives. So you are encouraged to share your thoughts also using this channel. With that, let me just turn to Helen or Christine, who is going to start the session, and thank you very much. I'll be circulating just some sheets for your identifying you and sharing information about this session and other mechanisms of coordination. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ricardo. And let me maybe start by thanking Marlon and Ricardo for organizing this session. And I also thank Yanis for coming and giving us the introductory remarks, and Shengetai for coming and joining us, and also for making the room available for those 3.5 hours for us to discuss. And for those who are new, let me welcome everyone to this to this dialogue session, let me call it like this. And just a few remarks about the national and the regionals. You may know from the IGF website that there are 11 regional IGF initiatives, 20 national IGF initiatives, 4 other initiatives mainly focusing on youth. And we welcome today not only coordinators or representatives of the initiatives, but also participants to the initiatives, as well as others who are trying to make a new national or regional initiative in their part. So everyone is welcome to put in their 2 cents into the session. So quickly about how we are going to run the session. First of all, we are going to divide the session into 2 segments. And we hope that all interventions will be precise and short, so that everyone has the chance actually to talk and to put their point of view. The first part will be focusing more on issues, so on topics, on key issues. One of the ideas is to try to identify what has been discussed or will be discussed for those who have not yet convened their annual meeting. What has been discussed in terms of issues, we will try to identify with the rapporteurs and everyone what are the commonalities of issues that we can actually maybe report back as an issue that is pressing coming out from the different regions, but also if there are any uniqueness in terms of topics that we really have to look at. And let's say that we will take maybe 60 minutes plus to do that. And before going to the second segment of the session, we're going to hear from the feeders workshops. We have 2 feeder workshops. Workshop 1 through 1.
So we'll start with segment 1, which is really talking. We wanted to share amongst, as Christine said, as organizers, but also participants, to share about the issues and the themes and topics that came up, to get a feel for the content and issues that you've had or are going to have. And so I think I'd like to, as we said, running this session as a dialogue, open up the floor. We had a session earlier today that was around CCs. So for New Zealand, we're the CCTLD and we're involved in our national initiative, and I know some others are. And we had a great sort of time just going around introducing your name and what initiative you're from, and listing, say, 2 or 3 of the top issues and topics that are featuring in your initiative or you think are going to. And as I said, it would be really useful for the transcription and to get to know each other if when you make an intervention you could introduce yourself, your name, and your initiative, country or region.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Imad Hubballah. I have had the privilege and the pleasure of chairing the Arab IGF MAG for the past few months, or 6-7 months. We have had 3 face-to-face meetings and a couple of WebEx meetings with the groups in preparation for this year's IGF. It's going to end up being in Lebanon on November 26, 27, with the or day 0, if you want to call it, on November 25. I'm not sure that our region is different than the rest of the regions in general, but the security issues in our region have made it a bit more interesting than some of the other regions. What we have gone through in the past few years, and especially in the past few months, has made it extremely important to make sure that the group that is dealing with the IGF gets closer together and be more engaging and be more engaged. one of the issues that we have to deal with in general in the region is related actually to security, related to the tendencies of the governments to really watch what's going on, look at the data that's being transmitted, in some cases probably stopping the internet, civil liberties, human rights, all of these type of things, privacy, these have always been on top of the list of the things, and they take a special meaning nowadays in our area. Now, what I'm going to talk about the rest of, for the 1 or 2 minutes before, and I do apologize, I have to go to a 3 o'clock meeting with the Francophone group, but we do have an issue of cultural aspects, if you want to call it, and that is related to the ability of the people to listen to others properly. And it's just basically how we're running. I mean, because it really makes a difference how people get engaged. Because of the whole security situation and because of what's going on in the Arab regions, you see tension amongst the people in the area. And I know this is, I'm talking about how we're running our business probably more than anything else. You see people tense to the point where they're not necessarily always listening to each other. Another issue is related to representation. I mean, are the people that do the work, do they really, or are they really representing the groups that they're representing? I'm representing Lebanon, for example. Am I representing the Lebanese government? And in my case, I do have an official letter and etc. But do the governments actually understand what it is that they're doing when they're sending representation? And does the representation really mean that the government believes everything that's going on, etc.? And that actually applies in the same way to some of the other groups, whether it is the civil society group, whether it's academia, and any of the other representation, technical community, private sector. Well, I guess this is a part of the struggle. This is the 3rd year, I guess, for the IGF. It's a part of the struggle. We're growing. But it's actually, the issues that we're dealing with are related to more or less the governments in our area are not necessarily clear on what's going on. Their level of awareness is very low, and this makes it more of a responsibility for us to really reach out. Our civil society, in my mind, is not as strong as it should be. We still have a long way to go. And the same thing applies to academia and its representation. Going back to one issue that's important, and that's to Shanghai and the whole IGF, it's basically related to funding. Funding. Without funding, it has been a struggle for us to get people engaged. It has been a struggle for us to have representation and people that follow the efforts and really get moving with it and be able to learn, to contribute, to engage, and to be productive in this area. And we have a lot of people from the MAG around the table, and I leave it up to them to continue the rest if they have other things to do. And thanks a lot for having this forum. It's excellent, and I hope it continues, and wish you success. Thank you.
Thank you for those thoughtful contributions. I know we have someone else who has to leave early.
Yes, I am Faisal Bayouli from Tunisia. And I am member of the Tunisian MAG and member of the Arab MAG too. So I will talk about the national MAG in Tunisia. And I think that the idea of the Tunisian MAG was began by people who attend the IGF in Nairobi, and the official launching of the Tunisian IGF was in September 2012, and then after and many action with media and to have the term of reference of the Tunisian MAG. We have the first elective assembly of the MAG in March 2013, and this assembly, with this assembly we have 13 members. We have 3 from the government, 3 from the civil society, 3 from the academia, and 3 from the private sector, and plus 1 from to do secretariat. So this process, I think that the political environment in Tunisia after what we call the Arab Spring create that this kind of process of multi-stakeholderism was created, and in 2013 we have our first IGF in Tunisia, and now we prepare our IGF for 2014. And I think two elements are important in this process of to create the national MAG. I repeated, the political environment is very important. I think this is one issue, and also I return for the finding, especially for the future, for how to survive. It's not we launch or we create a national MAG, but the important is to continue. And as our people know and say, the finding is very important. So I encourage all countries to create this national MAG, because it's an exercise of democracy. I think it's this model of multi-stakeholderism is very important in the national level, to especially for countries where there are not a lot of democracy. So it will create an dynamism for the people in different fields. Thank you.
Hi, Leonid Todorov, Russian IGF. Well, I work for the CCTLD, Russian CCTLD, and we have been for 5 years, consecutive years, the organizer, one of the major organizers and sponsors of the Russian IGF, which is flourishing so far. And while checking on the website of the Russian IGF and listening to my colleagues, I just realized that, after the third IGF, I thought, oh gosh, what I'm supposed to do with that? How can I actually live with this IGF? Because we've already discussed all the issues. And we've got all the prominent speakers to present. They have presented at our IGF. So how could I be able effectively market that? But thank God, Mr. Snowden, Mr. Putin, and some other people, we do have quite an ambitious desire to meet all the challenges for last year, for this year, for years to come, probably. And I just realized that some of you may have heard that the Russian government was particularly harsh when it came to the internet, because that common belief within the Russian government circles is that the internet basically is the prime source of political unrest and turmoil in the country. And therefore, as such, it should be controlled, regulated, and that a special legislation is needed to bring everything in order in-house, as well as to impose, the underlined the importance of imposition of the universal code of behavior on the internet, and they emphasized the importance of the international regulation, most likely under the UN body. So with all that in mind, when we had our 5th IGF, we decided to be very practical, to try the down-to-earth approach. And one of the major issues was the internet economy. So we tried to expose our government to the reality of the internet being an engine for socio-economic growth and development, and to show how important it is for the country's prosperity. Another issue, which was somewhat unique for the Russian IGF this year, was new GTLDs across Eurasia. Just for reference, Eurasia is, it covers 1/6 of the world's territory. And within Eurasia, we had only 6 or 7, if I'm not mistaken, new GTLDs, which is quite remarkable compared to some other regions. So we decided to examine and re-examine that issue and to see what is right and what is wrong about these new GTLDs and how they would affect the state of affairs on the Eurasian domain names market. Yanis and Chengitai were talking about some prospects for these interlinking between regional and national IGFs and the global IGF. And with all that in mind, I just realized that basically what we should talk, and I would invite everyone to discuss the issue, what could we learn from each other? Because not all the IGFs, even those present in this room, were established and promoted in a most conducive environment. We do face certain challenges, usually represented by our governments. So I believe that we could share some survival technique, if you will. That's number one. Number two, I believe that we still underestimate each other's potential when it comes to certain personalities, activists, and their expertise, and we tend to underestimate the importance of that direct local regional IGF to local regional IGF communication. Because the pool of international experts usually presenting at those IGFs is very narrow. This is another story. And we're very soon, even for those who just started their IGFs or about to start those, very soon they will face this challenge of running out of interesting people who could ignite the audience, engage a broader public at large participation for years to come. And that's another challenge. So how to create some kind of database of good speakers who could be like, like an ambulance. You just whistle and they're already there. Hopefully with the Chenghetai's funding at hand. So this is also a challenge. You cannot market this event by doing everything just on your own. Whoever people are at hand, I mean in your country or in your region, this is a very narrow circle. So with that, I guess I will just pass the floor to my colleague. Anyone?
Yes, thank you very much. If you can focus more on the issues, we're going to, thank you for the ideas. We're going to talk more in the second segment about strengthening the various initiatives and ideas to do that, but thank you to give us heads up. And I'd like to pass the floor to the African IGF. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Maktar Sek from United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. As you know, UNECA serves secretariat to host the Secretariat of African IGF. I'm going to give a little background to the African IGF, and after I give the floor to my colleague Marie Udima from Nigeria, member of the IGF Bureau, to present the outcome of the last African IGF meeting held in last July in Nigeria. As you know, I'm not going to talk too much about the issue of the African IGF in Africa, the issue of internet governance in Africa, but internet governance in Africa has been very active during the WSIS process. We have several regional meetings organized between 2002 and 2005 in Bamako, Cairo, Johannesburg, Tunis, and Douala also. And during this meeting, several delegates from Africa made a lot of discussion to finally create this African Internet Governance Forum in 2012 in Cairo. The first meeting was held in Cairo in 2012, and the second meeting in 2013 in Nairobi, and the third meeting in 2014 in Nigeria. How this African IGF is organized, you have all African countries are members of this African IGF, government, private sector, and civil society. And we promote also to have sub-regional IGF in each of the 5 regions of Africa, where you have the West African Internet Governance Forum, you have the Southern African Internet Governance Forum with all pays on the Southern Africa, you have East African Governance Forum with the 5 members of East African countries, with 5 countries of East Africa. We have a Central Africa Internet Governance Forum and the Arabic Africa International Forum. And the Bureau is composed by the host country. We organize this African IGF since 2012. In each year, we send a term or two where you should reply to several questions and provide some provision to organize this meeting. And UNECA is going to support also this process. I give you an example. This year we organized this meeting. When we organized this meeting in Nigeria, we have, I think, more than 400 participants. And ECA, in terms of budget, provide 150,000 US dollars to support this activity. And the government Nigeria also provide a lot of money to us, this country, with support of the other partners like Google, ISOC, Internet Society, ICANN, and other partners. The issue of the Bureau, it is the chairman of the Bureau, the country chair is a country who hosting the current IGF, and the other members are the representative of the 5 IGF, sub-regional IGF, plus African Union and UNECA, who support and host the Secretariat. This year, what we have before, when you look at since 2012, when you look at the participant, more than coming from the private sector and civil society, you don't have a lot of participants from government. And this year, we made a lot of effort in order to get a lot of members of government to sensitize them on the issue of the Internet of Governance. And this year, we have 41 countries participate at this, at the government level, to participate at this IGF in Abuja. Also, this year it was very particular, but is same time we evaluate the WISIS plus 10 process. And why this the meeting in Abuja discuss on several issues, like the issue of the cyber security, the issue is the WISIS plus 10, the issue of the Net Mondial, also the issue of the Dot Africa, several as a priority for Africa. And what we did also this year, we prepared an issue paper for this African Internet Governance Forum. Before people come, just you have the program, you have several subcommittee or sub-meeting, and this year we prepare one document, is an issue paper for this African IGF. What are the key issues we can discuss? Instead, everybody gets a document. When you go to any session, you know what are the key elements you shall discuss with this thematic area. And it is the first time we organize, we prepare this document. This document is prepared by UNECA. We recruit some consultant with the team and to work in this document within 3 months to prepare this document. And this document was very helpful in order for the understanding of the participant to the issue of the IGF and also the way forward. What is the need? What are the needs for African country? What are their priority? And I think we have a meeting after tomorrow, Friday, to discuss more in detail on this issue of African Governance Forum. I'm going to give the floor now to my colleague Emery to present the outcome of the meeting of in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Mary Uduma, and I'm wearing 2 caps. One is the African IGF that held in Nigeria, and then the Nigerian IGF, which I convene and chair the local multi-stakeholder group, advisory group. For the African IGF, we had a pre-conference where we talked about the IANA transition, because we thought it was very necessary that we look at that. And so a workshop was devoted for that, and attendance was good, and we had a lot of people follow us online. And the most important thing that happened to us at the African IGF was that IGF Secretariat supported us with the remote participation. Thank you very much. Okay, and we had another one on data protection, organized by Organization International de la Francophonie. Then public access by the library section, and knowledge management by the ECA. So those ones prepared us, and we patterned it with the general sections with at the global level. So we talked about global access, regional and national IGFs. We talked about the issues that are in African IGF. There were expert presentations. We also looked at our recommendations on policy enabling access, content creation, dissemination, and use, internet as an enabler. We have recommendations on this. So I'm not going to read all of them, but I think they're on our website. I want to get to where we looked at what is peculiar to internet, African internet governance. And that is what we call African IGF statutory guidelines and efficiency. How do we enhance the efficiency of this program? We decided that by the next IGF, we should have a dedicated pre-conference workshop for newcomers only. Those that are coming for the first time, that they should also at least understand what IGF is all about and how they can cope with us. We also engage the partnership with, that we're going to engage South-South cooperation with Brazil in the spirit of the Net Mondial. And we'll work towards having a dedicated website. As at now, our website is a page on ECA website. So we think that we should have a dedicated, it's already done now. Okay, fine. Okay, stand alone. And then we should operate open and inclusive mailing list where everybody will be able to express themselves. And then the other thing is that, as he said, government has not been taking part so much. And the business sector, the private sector, we could have the technical sector come in, technical community, sorry. The business community is still lacking. We were able to get the government to come because ECA provided money to sponsor government representative. But the business community also needed sponsorship as well. And we said we didn't have money for business community, but I think we need to encourage our business community to, that's the community that is not yet taking part fully in our IGF. Do I go on with the Nigerian IGF or I stop there?
Oh, if you'd like to offer perhaps the main topics and issues from Nigerian IGF?
Nigerian
so,
IGF.
Yeah,
okay,
so the topics that
okay,
were,
topics.
like maybe
okay.
2 or 3, just sort of quickly.
All right,
yeah.
okay. We for the Nigerian IGF, we also patterned it in line with the global IGF, but we had a different theme. Okay, but if you don't mind, can we continue? I'll come back to the Nigerian IGF. Another person can say something. Thank you. I'll come back to there because I'm trying to pull up my notes. I'm sorry.
No, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Being aware that we're sort of getting into our time and we have many initiatives here to speak to, I'd like to, I think, first of all, remind myself about doing reports that I know we send to Changatai to talk about participation, the sort of, those reports that go in are an important part of sharing all of that, and that we don't have time to go through all that today, but to focus on sort of the topics and key issues quickly, 2 or 3, so that we can hear a bit more from some other initiatives. I think we have Subi and then Marilyn. Yeah.
So, sorry, Mr. Chair. I just wondered, the program, I mean, we understood that the first segment is feeding in by the workshops 139 and 140 because I have to leave. So if I think that we move to second segment before we finish the feed-in part. I'm not sure if I'm understood correctly or not.
It was supposed to be between the 2 segments, but if we can take maybe 2 interventions and then move to the, since you have to leave. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Subi Chaturvedi, and I am part of the multi-stakeholder advisory group of the India IGF. This is a new initiative, and I also convened the working group of the India IGF, which is trying to get the first initiative off the ground. There's been tremendous amount of work and progress that has been made. There are key issues because when we speak about India or China, there is power in numbers. We're looking at still trying to connect the unconnected, and we believe the next billion will come online from South Asia and these regions. So as far as progress on the national initiative is concerned, India has also just hosted the Asia Pacific Regional IGF, and I see colleagues here on the table who will probably report back into it. But this is an amazing time for internet governance. As far as telecom was concerned, we've had a reasonably successful story, but IG was just about unfolding where conversations are beginning. But the good news is when you have a majority government that comes into play because the internet drove more people to come out and vote, you become more sensitive about issues around the internet. Then you begin understanding that this is something that grew out of the folds of the government, and the core values have to be nurtured and preserved. So we have a MAG in place which has representatives both from the academic, technical community, media and government. There's also been a working group that was put into place which had representation from all the stakeholder groups. So every single decision that gets taken as far as choices of the theme, and this year we're looking at connecting India for empowerment. For us, access remains a big challenge and an issue. And when I say that, it's not just physical infrastructure. The government has initiated a new project, which is the National Fiber Optic Cable Network, or NOFUN, which is, I believe, a lot of fun for a lot of people. They're looking at connecting 250,000 rural village self-governments or panchayats, and this is also called Follow the Fiber, where one of our biggest challenges remains power. There are villages where there is no power that exists, and connections are impossible. So along with infrastructure, there's also the issue of digital literacy, media literacy, and power supply, renewable energy, and capacity building, which is a very, very important challenge. As far as the initiative is concerned, it's informed by what is happening globally and also the region, because this is a space where India sees leadership potential in terms of people who speak the language. So the government is now looking at coming to the table and also being on the table. But one of the key issues, and I want to bring this back to the whole perception of national and regional IGFs, because it was initially mentioned that there are 20 initiatives in the region and about 11 in country. Am I correct? The other way around. So 11 and 20, and this is a number that has to go up. And what is it that we can collectively do to make this go up is something that I'm very keen on listening in, because as a member of the MAG, this is one space where I think we have to do more. In terms of visibility, I see so many of us here, but I'd like to see more people who are coming in and listening in. So probably a main session that looks at national and regional initiatives so that these stories can be told, better linkages between best practices, and now there's a new initiative that has taken off, which is looking at 5 key themes, best practice fora, where we have actual takeaways that we can take, go home, and create formats where we can respond to. So as far as, and I'm going to be quick, as far as key themes and key issues, digital trust is very, very important, because what we want to see is a connected, open, and universal internet. So when things which harm digital trust come out, there is a reaction that talks about data localization and data sovereignty. These are issues that are deeply problematic and require discussion and debate. So that's one of the main themes for this year's IGF. Then we're looking at access, we're looking at critical internet resources. We're also looking at internet for growth, the industry perspective, and how we can have stable policies that can encourage more people to engage. And we're looking at multi-stakeholderism, which is again an important issue, because when we go back to the IGF website and you're looking at motivations of how is it that you can have more national and regional initiatives, the question still is...
Subi, sorry, we have two, we had 2 segments. Could we maybe finish the rest of that in the second segment?
So I'll just wrap this up. As far as issues are concerned, the emerging issues remain data localization and cyber jurisdiction, and also, importantly, the right to be forgotten. So this is what India is looking at right now. Thank you so much for listening, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions that somebody might have. Thank you.
May I be next after you go to the report from the workshops? Is that okay?
That'll be great. Okay, can we have the report back from the workshop 140? Ayman?
Okay, thank you. Actually, let me introduce myself. My name is Ayman Al-Sherbini from the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia. ESCWA is the umbrella organization and the co-founder of the Arab IGF process. And I'm heading the Arab IGF Executive Bureau for Joint Coordination, as well as I'm a member of the Global MAG. So I have, in my capacity in the Arab IGF, with my colleagues, designed a workshop 140, and I have had the honor to moderate it. The title of the workshop 140, which has been chosen as a feed-in workshop here, is The Future of the Global and Regional IGFs, post-2015. And this took place today morning, and we had 7 panelists in this workshop. Let me read the intro to understand the context, at the UN General Assembly is currently examining the possibility of extending the IGF mandate for a further 5 years or 10 years period, which encompasses an assessment of IGF's effectiveness so far. This workshop, the 140, came as a platform for all stakeholders to address and discuss the role and achievements of the global and the regional IGFs, as well as identify the scope of further strengthening. So this was actually the main context. So there was a dimension that relates to the global IGF, how can it be better, how can it be stronger, and the other dimension was related to the regional IGFs. So as far as this session is concerned, I will, should I feed in the 2 dimensions, the future of the global IGF and the dimension of the regional IGFs, or should I focus only on the regional dimension?
The key findings from the workshop.
Generally, okay.
Yes.
So generally speaking, as I said, we touched based on how we see the future of the global IGF as a mechanism, as an ecosystem, as well as the regional dimension. So some of the important findings or observations is that the panelists, let me give a glimpse the panelists who were they representing. 3 of them were from the Arab IGF community, namely Christine, Qusay, and Reda Gallouz. And we had 4 from non-Arab IGF, which is one representing the African IGF, Pakan-Fai, and the Russian IGF, Leonid Todorov, as well as Parminder from IT for Change. And remind me if I forget any name. The Shengtai was there, but he couldn't make it also for other commitments. Maybe I forgot a name. Okay, so we had this like input from several IGFs. One of them was from the floor from Mary from the African IGF, as well as the Nigerian IGF. We had also some Tunis IGF input. So we had a flavor from the national, regional, and the global, and not an exhaustive set for research purposes, but we had a feel from the ground as follows. First of all, we had also Wolfgang Kleinwächter on the panel, and he's a board member of the ICANN. So we had this diversity. So the take-home messages is as follows. First of all, there is a need for strengthening the multi-stakeholder model and for instigating it at the national level. Some people prefer to use at the country level, but anyways, the idea is to work on what has agreed to be coined as the foundation. The foundation is the national IGFs, and as Subi has said rightfully, there is a number that needs to grow significantly. We have 190-something countries in the world, so we aspire to this number of national IGFs, which should feed into regional IGFs, which should feed in the global IGF. And this is the second point, which is the regional global linkages. We have observed the weakness of these linkages between regional IGFs and the global IGF. This ecosystem is loose. And this is something that we all agreed in the workshop, that to strengthen the linkage between the regional and the global, and to design it as part of the ecosystem. So, for example, one of the ideas came up, which is very important for Shanghai to consider, that the Secretariat has the participation of regional IGFs representatives as part of obligation on the regional IGFs, not only as nice to be or nice to have. So sometimes some of the regional IGF representatives go to the MAG to bring their priorities bottom up. Sometimes they don't go. But what we suggest is that to make this part of the modus operandi of this linkages from regional to global, and vice versa, from the regional to the national. And by this, we start to build the ecosystem or the pyramid from national to regional to global. And this requires budget considerations, which Shanghai has said in the beginning, that there is going to be some kind of pooling of resources for the regional mechanism. So maybe it goes to engagement in the MAG, in the global MAG. This is one element. The other element, we have recognized also the diversity of models. So not all regional IGFs or national IGFs necessarily need to have the same type of umbrella or champion organizations. It is something of a specificity to each region and each country, and we acknowledged and recognized this need of flexible case-by-case basis on the evolution of such kind of mechanisms. The last thing that this workshop has discussed and was important is that we all share a common interest in strengthening the global IGF. The regions do have this interest. And we recognize other processes that run in parallel that also works on strengthening the IGF, like the Net Mondial. So we acknowledged this kind of messages coming from the Net Mondial, strengthening the IGF, and that ultimately most of the panelists agreed that the processes consolidate each other. There is no competing processes in the global landscape, but rather it is a kind of consolidation of the same target mechanism, which is the global IGF. We all wanted to be more, a little bit more of outcome generating. We don't use the word output, but outcome generating, so that it has teeth and can really induce change. But this was agreed to be evolutionary, and this is not like a black or white, but something in the middle between zero outcome and full output. So the take-home message is that what I provided, hopefully I haven't forgot anything, but this is what I can remember from the morning session. Thank you again.
Yes, thank you very much for this feedback. Before I give the floor to Marlon to intervene, I will kindly ask you to be really short, because we've already consumed half the time of the first segment and not everyone did get the chance to talk. So please limit yourself to 3 minutes if you can. And the one other thing that you might want to explore as you talk about the topics is how we've heard, for example, from the African IGF that they had a session on the IANA transition, another one on the WSIS plus 10. So how did the global agenda actually affect the topics that were discussed in your initiative? Marlon, please go ahead.
So I'm going to take us back to the agenda and ask all of us to try to follow it in our responses. This is not a place to give meeting reports, as tempting as that is. And I know that sounds a bit strong, but let me really ask you to take that into account. Otherwise, we're not going to get to this really great discussion we need to have. I act as the chief catalyst to the IGF USA. I'm not going to talk about our organizing structure, but I will just say that we do not call our advisory group MAG, we call it Steering Committee. It is totally open, anyone can join. The criteria is they have to commit to the principles. So we have a fairly large steering committee. It's probably about 60 or 70 people. That probably makes us a little different, and I mention it only for that reason of mentioning the diversity. We launched the IGF USA in 2009. We did not have an event in 2013, partly because our government was closed at key times, speaking of the influence of external events. We did our IGF USA in July of this year, which is a customary time for us. The topics that are similar to or reflected from the IGF itself we actually did a session on net neutrality. It was not our intent to do a session on net neutrality. That is not something normally that would happen in the IGF USA, but we were motivated by the Net Mondial call for further work on net neutrality and the fact that there would be a session here. And I mention that because the next question is, were there external events which influenced your program? We also did a session on the evolution of the internet governance ecosystem, and we did a session on the IANA transition and the accountability mechanisms. And I want to emphasize that in our case, there was more emphasis on the need for effective accountability mechanisms at ICANN than not just on the IANA transition. We instituted an innovation that I'll mention. We did a policy slam, which was really exciting. Won't say more about it now, but it was a really exciting way to identify recommendations that we thought we should take forward, and I'll mention what one of them was. We identified a missing group who must become involved and participate in the IGF at all levels, and that is the innovators and engineers and researchers who are building the next generation of products and therefore creating some of the perhaps new applications but also challenges. I thought that was a kind of an innovation that would be worth mentioning. We were heavily influenced by external events like WSIS external activities, WSIS Plus 10, Action Line Review, the NetMundi All experience, and the upcoming issues related to the UNGA decisions for the overall WSIS review. And that's probably because there's a very heavy representation in our steering committee of people who are knowledgeable or actively involved in some of those settings. Thank you.
All right, yep, so we have about 30 minutes left for this first session, which again, to reiterate the agenda, we want to talk about topics, key issues, links to external events. So 30 minutes, 3 minutes each, we can fit in 10 of you. If we could we'll go back to Mary, and then we'll keep a list. So we've got
All right, thank you very much. I just want to say that what we focused on was harnessing multi-stakeholder framework for internet governance and economic growth. So that was our topic, all right? And one of the things we talked about was building a democratic framework for internet governance in Nigeria. And again, we thought of how the affordability of internet access in Nigeria. So we looked at connecting to the exchange point to drop the cost of making calls through the internet within Nigeria. So our internet exchange point there should be a mandatory connection by all ISPs to that internet exchange point. That's one of the key issues. We also talked about the IANA transition, and we found out that nobody knew about it at the national level. Nobody knew about it. And it was Jimson that gave us that. And after the program, so that's why we introduced it again in the African IGF. We talked about NetMundi as well. We also looked at, one thing we do is after the program, all our recommendations, we send it to our government. Some of the recommendations we have made in the past, they've adopted and have been working with that. I think I want to stop there.
Thank you.
Hi, Mark Buell from .ca Canada's CCTLD. I'm also the coordinator of the Canadian Internet Governance Forum.
Can you speak closer to the microphone?
Yeah. The fifth Canadian Internet Governance Forum will be held in a little over a month in Ottawa. Like Marilyn had said, we also don't have a MAG. What we have is a loose-knit group of people who are interested and will feed into a process that we have to identify the topics. And we're a bit unique in how we identify our topics. We use a couple of processes. The first is we conduct a national survey of Canadians to find out what their top-of-mind issues are related to internet issues. We do that every 2 to 3 years. Consistently, it's come back that Canadians are most interested in cybersecurity and digital literacy. We also follow high-profile media events. So in terms of external issues impacting our Internet Governance Forum, things like Snowden revelations, of course, had a major effect last year. So we see what's going on in the media, how we can fit that into the topics I just mentioned. Finally, we use our IGF as a forum for public education as well. So like you said, Kenya, there was little knowledge of the IANA transition in Canada that would be overstating it to say that there's little knowledge. There's next to none. So we're using our IGF in October to do some awareness raising around the IANA transition, and we'll have a session focused on that. But so that means that this year in October we're exploring 3 issues, the first of which is lawful access, and that's really being driven by some legislation that's before our Parliament right now that will give ISPs full immunity from prosecution if they turn over your browsing history. Secondly, we're looking at Canada's digital economy, and specifically a couple of government initiatives in that regard. One is anti-spam legislation that was recently put into effect, looking at how that affects Canadians and Canadian businesses. And we're also looking at Canada's digital economy strategy, which is a little less than a year old, but seeing if it's moving the internet file forward in Canada. And as I said, we're doing a session on the IANA transition, but that's really more related to education.
Thank you for that concise listing of some interesting topics. Yep. We had a gentleman over here. Yep.
Thank you. My name is Hisham Abou Yazid. I'm with the National Telecom Regulatory Authority of Egypt. We are hosting the secretariat function for the Arab IGF. As some of the speakers have mentioned about the Arab IGF, the agenda itself has been developed. It's not yet convened. It will be in late November this year in Beirut, 26, 27. The agenda is composed of main 4 themes, sub-themes, I would say, on the access and infrastructure that came as one of the most important topics for the region, specifically about the broadband affordability and the changing business models for ISPs, with a little bit of reflection on net neutrality aspects as well. The second sub-theme was about internet global policies, and here we have issues related to internet principles developed at Net Mondial, as well as the globalization of CIR and the processes related to the IANA transition and ICANN accountability. The third sub-theme was about openness, rights and responsibilities, and here the attention was given to the content regulation issues, as well as the open data and multilingualism on the internet. The fourth and last sub-theme was about privacy and rebuilding of trust. Some of the subtopics of it were about child online protection, which is one of the topics that come high on the agenda in the region, as well as the big data analytics and its privacy dimension. Regarding the second question in this segment of the session, how the global agenda were reflected on the community at large, and here it's not just about the event of the annual event of the Arab IGF. We have a public list, a mailing list that is open for anyone, whether from the Arab region or elsewhere, to subscribe and engage in the discussion. And this mailing list actually turned out to be very useful to capitalize on the community's efforts, because with Net Mondial, for instance, the community was able to mobilize themselves and actually establish an informal working group that submitted a submission to the Net Mondial conference. This was one thing. The second was a similar effort with the IANA transition consultation. Another working group worked on drafting a contribution to the mailing list that was established for this purpose, and it was submitted on behalf of the community at large.
All right, thank you. We have a bit of a list going here, so we'll add Mexico to the end there. Is there anyone else? We've got gentlemen here next, then here, then Edmund, then back to Mexico. So we've got a bit of a list going. Sir, please.
Thank you. I'm Fahmi Al-Bahath, co-founder of Internet Society Yemen chapter, and I'm a member of the Arab IGF MAG. At first, I'm glad to see 10 people, almost 10 people from my country here in the IGF, and it's the first time. Last year was almost 1 or 2. And I think it's a good result for what we have done the last weeks. In fact, about the issues in Yemen, we have a lot of issues related to internet governance, but the most three, I think, infrastructure and the monopoly of the internet services by the government, also privacy and security. Even the content also can, I mean the Arabic content or Yemeni content, since most of people cannot stop talking about politics during the situation, you know, in Yemen. So we in internet society was thought about how when we discuss many issues, what we can do. We supposed to a national IGF. Some of friends said you're gonna do a national IGF while the stakeholders didn't know exactly what's IGF. We said, what's the problem? We can teach them. We can let them know what's I mean internet governance. So we invited some people from ICANN and RIBE in CC to prepare some events. We met the Minister of ICT twice to explain to them and to the government what's AGI. And we launched a week, we said Internet Governance Week in Yemen. We made many workshops for stakeholders one by one, and in the last day we bring them together to discuss. It was, some people called it a mini IGF. By the way, we have a plan to launch a Yemeni IGF next year. We already started working on this. We are in the first steps. I mean, we are fresh in the field. We are looking forward to help from all of you, from those who have experience in national IGFs. Also, I would like to thank Arab IGF, MAG, also for their support all the time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those topics and experience developing that initiative. Ma'am.
Hello, I'm new here. My name is Sita Laksmi, coming from Indonesia. The same like US and Canada, we don't have MAC. We actually have very fluid people, non-structured people, but we believe in one principle, which is multi-stakeholder. So our financial procedures as well as our decision-making processes was coming from that. And we might not be able to give you specific topics because what we provide, we have 2 national IGF. The first one was in 2012, right before we held the IGF in Bali, because we would like to see that IGF 2013 in Bali as a momentum for Indonesia to step forward in IGF, and we just held it in August 2 weeks ago, which is we able to get more stakeholder. But the more important for Indonesia is creating platform in which people can speak freely, as well as mature, as well as have a good dialogue on international IGF. So that's what we aim for. So the specific topic that might be a bit unique for Indonesia is sovereignty, because that our government would like to have a sovereignty issues. That's also the government would like to discuss, as well as the creative industry, because we would like to make Indonesia more better than just a user, but also a producers in this innovation or economic development. So yeah, so that's the thing. And the plan for the coming years, as we would like to make the IDIGF, we call it Indonesia Internet Governance Forum, more institutionalized. So we would like to build like secretariat, we would like to build a series of capacity building that can help all Indonesian, well, it depends on the stakeholder, to have understanding on internet governance, because not many people understand about internet governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. UK?
Thank you. The UK IGF, again, very similar to Canada and the US in that we don't have a MAG as such, but we have a sort of a loose committee who kind of input into topics and convening sessions. and we try to use members of that committee to take the lead on sessions. Many of our topics have already come up, so as usual, Marilyn's stolen my thunder. We've had sort of the IANA transition, the Net Mondiale, ICANN accountability, also cybersecurity, network filtering, which I'm not sure has come up yet, and IPv6 were our key topics this year. Thank you.
Going to Asia Pacific, regional IGF.
Edmund Chung here from .Asia, and we're helping serve as the secretariat for the Asia Pacific Regional IGF. I guess following from what was just said, we also organize around what we call an MSG, multi-stakeholder steering group, that is somewhat loosely formed in a sense that anyone can volunteer to be on it. So far, it hasn't gotten out of control. It's not too big. I think we have 50 or 60 people on it, but we have a understanding that if it ever gets out of control, we might have to put more structure around it. This is our 5th year, and it's still growing a little bit. We have a decent gathering, about 350 people in Delhi this year. However, that's still a very small number considering I guess the diversity of our region. So, going back to, I guess, the issues, I think a few items. A lot of the issues that were raised are similar to the topics that are here at the global IGF. I guess that's that part of the explanation is that we have a pretty diverse region. But there are a few things I wanted to highlight. One is a pretty strong youth IGF component that we have built. And this is the first year that the youth IGF is fully integrated into the regional IGF agenda, so you can see it side by side as part of the whole IGF APR IGF. We'd like to, work on exporting this and, getting this concept to more initiatives as well. We have a continued challenge to improve government and broader industry participation. I think that's a theme that's coming out. Probably not just us, but for regional and local and national IGFs. We feel that we have an improving richness of the content that we are developing, but it's more. And building on that, I think, is towards a set of more tangible outcomes of substance, and which will, I think, we hope to in turn promote participation. And one important aspect, I think, a few people here mentioned as well, is the possibility of a tighter feed into the global IGF and how that could happen. What the thing is. So on the IANA transition part, I don't know if I have a minute or so, because you have that on the impact on that. I think that's if Jen can just spend 1 minute on it.
Hi, this is Jennifer Chung, also from the .Asia organization, helping out with the APR IGF Secretariat. I'm not going to repeat what Edmund just said, but just to give a little bit more detail on the 4 sub-themes that we had for the APR IGF. The first one is enabling access. The second is security and DNS. The third is internet and human rights. And the fourth is IGF and the future internet ecosystems. So what Edmund just mentioned, we did have within the 4th sub-theme, so the IGF and future internet ecosystems, a few sessions on the IANA transition, and in particular, participants from the AP region were very interested about the feasibility of the U.S. government conditions to the outcome and the process, and how they can get more transparency on the NTIA judgment and details of the timeline of the transition, the definition of what the global multi-stakeholder community is, and what we expect to see after the transition in the longer, run. And common concerns came out, included how to integrate and strengthen participation both at the regional and global level within this construct. I would like to pass to one of the YIGF participants and Net Mission Ambassador Wilson, if he could talk just very little bit about the Youth IGF, which was run concurrently with the APR IGF this year.
Okay, Wilson Lam here. I'll be very specific and brief on what we have talked about in the YIGF. So the participants mainly come from different areas of Delhi, mostly undergraduate students, aged from 18 to 25 to 26 or something. Some of them are working or doing an internship. And we have 4 areas of discussions. The first one, the access, how to overcome unequal access of the internet. The participants, we think that rather than view internet, not just a software or a community, it's a platform of voice, and that's where the voice, the youth voice can be heard. And they concern a lot about the unequal access between across the country, their own country, India, where cities, they have a lot of cheap, affordable mobile access to the internet, while there are many areas like the rural areas and the village are still lacking behind in internet access, especially on the areas of infrastructure and also the gender equality, because a lot of women lack access rights to the internet. And the second topic is about openness. We talk about whether the internet should be censored in national security sense. And we think that the participants think that there should be a lot more transparency from the government, and there should be a formation of panel with the 3 stakeholders, the government, the business, and the civil society, to oversee the censorship policy of the government and to try to reach to a more equal and transparent censorship protocol of the government. And the third one is the security. They discussed about how to secure our own data in this mobilizing world, because India becoming the most fast-growing mobile markets in the world. They care a lot about their Facebook data, their personal data, and also their WhatsApp data, and they discuss how the 3 different stakeholders can cooperate together to become come up with a better data practice security on company level and also on personal level. And the last thing is driving social change through a various amount of ICT technologies. So we've talked about the 3 different kinds of topics, and they come up with a lot of ideas on or a lot of problems that their country is facing, the challenges they face. So it is time for them to come up with solutions, or through ICT technologies, how to drive social change, how do we enable the women or the people that are not able to access the internet in the rural areas, so that they can develop their own community and bring up the economic development and so on and so forth. So these are the 4 specific areas we discussed in the Youth IGF in Delhi, India. Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, we have 2 final interventions in this section of the session, shall we say. Sandra from Neurodig, please.
Thank you, Ellen. I promise to be very brief. We had actually 3 influences to define our topics. One was the multi-stakeholder process to define an overarching theme, which was digital society at stake, Europe and the future of the internet. This goes definitely into the direction of the Snowden revelations discussion. The other one was, of course, Net Mondial, which influenced our IGF not only by the discussion, but also by our procedures. We integrated, because it took place in Germany this year, we integrated the German IGF into the Eurodig preparation process. And this was one of the main topics. We had a pre-meeting before the Brazilian meeting, before the Net Mondial, and we had a feedback meeting right before the Eurodig to get answers from the Net Mondial, actually. So this whole internet governance or Eurodig process was designed somehow around Net Mondial. And the third level came up because we are in Germany. Germany is very economic oriented. So the European industry versus, or the weakness of the European industry in the global economy level was another topic, which was one of the main topics. We we were influenced by Net Mondial as well in the way we reproduced our outcomes. So when our messages from Berlin are out of customs by tomorrow, hopefully, you can come to the Eurodig booth and get one. And we tried to be very brief, bullet points only, to formulate what has been discussed in our sessions for every plenary and for every workshop we did it. So please come and get one by tomorrow, because I don't want to carry them at home on Saturday. And well, side topic on the European agenda are, of course, copyright and data protection. But I see this is versus accessibility, which is not such a big topic in Europe, but in other regions, as I just realized here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and Manuel.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Manuel Aces. I'm from NIC Mexico, the CCTLD of .mex. Actually, I'm working, besides my regular day job as prospective studies manager from NIC Mexico, I work as a technical secretariat of the internet, of the dialogues on internet governance. That's our initiative group for a local IGF effort. We kind of similarly follow a process like Canada, like Colombia, and like the US. We don't call ourselves a MAG, a multi-stakeholder advisory group, not even a steering committee or something like that. We just try to keep it very informal, very loosely interconnected. We just call ourselves an initiative group, or Grupo de Iniciativa in Spanish. And our main purpose is to increase dialogue and increase understanding of internet governance topics within Mexico. We are not a legally established organization or something very formalized. We are just an irregular group of people, working on an individual basis, coming from the different sectors. We come from the 5 sectors, the traditional 5 sectors: academia, government, the technical community, the business sector, and civil society. We started being 10 people from these 5 sectors, and now we are running almost like 14. Our main topics are, in Mexico, the main governance topics are access and digital divide, how to reduce the digital divide, because Mexico has almost like 40% of people connected to the internet, net neutrality and openness of data traffic, privacy and compliance with security authorities, and copyright and intermediary liabilities. And of course, we were influenced by external processes like Net Mundial, NTIA stewardship transition towards the IANA functions. We are now currently debating the plenipotentiary conference in order to establish Mexico's position for October. And I believe that is almost very briefly what we are discussing right now.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you. I think we've raised a lot of good issues. I was going to just open one last call for issues and influences. If there are any initiatives here that didn't get to sort of briefly go through theirs. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Jimson Olufuye. I'm from the private sector. I just needed to make this intervention because when the report from the African region was mentioned, it talked about private sector participation. Really, I must commend Mary. Mary is the champion for Nigeria. Nigeria is doing pretty well. But I think there is need for improvement, even at the regional level, involving the private sector. You cannot compare the private sector in developing countries with private sector in developed countries. In developing countries, they are still trying to live with maintaining their daily life and paying salaries and just sustainability. So there is need for encouragement at this level. Just like when internet started, business was encouraged then, even in the developed countries today. So they need to know that there has to be that kind of consideration if you want to get business on the table, because they are always asking what is the need for us. So they need to be part of it to realize it. And lastly, just to encourage my colleague there, he said, what can we do to sustain? Because he asked a question to keep the momentum of internet governance in Russia. So I think you need to, I don't know if it's to work, but basically the scientific evidence that is available today, we will continue to do what's best to project it. As you mentioned, the effect on the economy, on the social well-being of the people, and well, my 2 cents.
Right, thank you very much. Well, I think that leads into the next session, which is talking a bit more about recommendations for how there are linkages between how we support the national and regional initiatives and link them to the larger. So I'll hand over to Christine to chair the next session.
Okay, I think during the next 60 minutes, if you want, we would like to maybe focus more on how can we first discuss how we can support national and regional initiatives more, and how can we better strengthen them and strengthen the linkage between them and between the IGF. That's on one side, but also maybe we want to explore an issue that has been mentioned, the issue of funding. So that's an issue that we can actually maybe listen to the IGF Support Association a bit more, what it is and how it can support. One more thing, there was talk about how to link further and get more policymakers on the table and interested. This is an issue that you want also to address maybe. And we want to maybe come with an output of what are the key messages that we would like to put forward to the IGF taking stock session on the last day. So again, please make your interventions short so everyone can talk. So I think, please.
Thank you. I'm Marina Sokolova. I'm from Belarus, and I have identified myself as Juridik because I was introduced to Internet governance process through Diplo Foundation, and my first Internet governance meeting was at Juridik in Geneva. But now I'm going. I have dared to take the floor because today we have discussed the possibilities of strengthening or empowerment participation of Southern and Eastern European countries, including Balkan countries, Belarus, Ukraine, Armenia even, and to strengthen their input into Juridik and to make their voices heard at Juridik. So we have agreed that there is one issue which has completely fallen out of the attention at the International Governance Forum and at Juridik. Oh, I'm sorry, access lag. Yes, when there are not so many internet users. But in countries like Belarus and Ukraine, we have more than 60% of internet penetration, but the awareness of internet governance issues is very, very low. Even people who register their domain names, the businesses, if you ask them what ICANN is, they will never answer. They don't know what is it. So I think that, and we discussed the possibilities to build this local national awareness. So, and I think that we'll put forward some suggestions, but still this awareness gap is a very important thing. And the other thing, which is a Belarusian experience, it's about external pressure for the importance of external pressure and transparency for some specific countries like Belarus, for instance. And to be short, I will give you an example. So now I'm working for a human rights organization, Law Trend, which is engaged in the Internet Freedom Project. And there were rumors in Belarus that UNDP, United Nations Development Program, is going to conduct a workshop on hate speech online in September. And we tried to find out when this workshop will take place, who will participate, and how can we participate, or just learn something about what is discussed. And till now we have haven't learned anything. So I think that at UN level, so because Belarusian government is working with UNDP generally, not even with the Council of Europe, so I think that it is very important that these organizations and Internet Governance Forum and ICANN and all the other international projects and processes were transparent, and so that civil society in countries like Belarus was informed directly, so that some information sent to them, because another way we will never get them. So thank you.
Thank you. We're having Mexico and then the Arab.
Okay, actually you asked for principles in order to keep it manageable or keep it working, right? Okay, I have a few principles that we kind of follow there in Mexico in our Grupo Iniciativa. And our principles are: keep it flexible. You don't need to have a same multi-stakeholder structure for every country. I mean, every country needs to find its own proper structure in order to work properly. Keep it diverse. Try to bring all the relevant stakeholders to the table. I mean, but trying to maintain a manageable number. I mean, you might be, as long as you want a multi-stakeholder, but you can be managing a group of 200 people or something. Try to keep it on a relative small number in order to keep it manageable. Keep it diverse on funding also. In Mexico, we don't do the event, our annual IGF, local IGF, if we don't have at least four principal sponsors that are coming from each of the stakeholders involved. Keep it equal footing. This is very important. This means that everyone must have the same amount of power or within the table of negotiation. Within the that really are not equal footing. I won't say any names, but it is very obvious. Agree to disagree. This is very important to have a real multi-stakeholder ecosystem within Mexico. At least we try to keep it that way. We are not afraid of challenging any government proposal, or perhaps the government challenge any CCTLD or technical community proposal. We just, priorly to building this multi-stakeholder group, we were very interrelated in other fora, so this helped build out the friendship relations previous to building this multi-stakeholder. Hence, it is very common. We have this confidence to really agree to disagree and tell each other why certain actions wouldn't be suited for our local ecosystem. Bring on the hot topics to the table in order to avoid any surprises. We better have previous regulations and previous hot topics be discussed within this multi-stakeholder table or fora in order to avoid any non-wanted surprise that could affect the internet ecosystem.
Thank you, Christine. I'm Charles Shaban, the Vice Chair of Arab Mag. First, I'm sorry for being late for this session, but I got stuck in the other session. I did not expect that. But I understood my colleague Hisham made already a very good summary on many things. Regarding the second part, I would like to share what I think a lot of people mentioned since yesterday too. It's good sometimes to have a regional, maybe to follow the global IGF main themes, but we need to concentrate on the needs of that region, so the end users. So yes, we can talk about access, we can talk about connectivity and so on, but let's make the concentration what's in our region. For example, in the Arab IGF, for us as Arab IGF, I think we should concentrate what matters for the Arab region and the Arab countries. The other issue is maybe it's good to have shared experiences between the different regional IGFs too, not only the global. I think it will be good because I understood Hisham is very fast, and he already made me some very nice summary. That even Ambassador Kirkland said about how they can help to have conference calls, maybe, and we can share. Maybe we can do the same, not only with the global, with the other regions. The last thing, which is the funding, which is very, very important, of course. And I can add to what my colleague said. I think it's covered. No need to say the same things again. But to add to it, maybe to have, especially for example, like in our region, we need more participation from maybe small private firms, not only the government. Sometimes even the private firms, it's good, they will need funding. Civil society, the same. So funding will help for continuation, and at the same time maybe bringing more to the table and to be more active. Thank you.
Yes, I'm having here, and then
all right.
And
then first, I want to. Okay, can I? Do I go ahead? Do I have the floor? All right. First, I want to ask, just as is mentioned about funding, we had a peculiar experience this year. One of our financiers, that's a government agency, because we are not a government agency per se. I belong to the CCTLD, the NIRA, that's the secretariat. The regulator that used to fund us said this year that they are not going to pay money into the CCTLD account because IGF doesn't have its own account. That IGF should have its own account. So the structure, I wanted to know whether anybody can share about the structure in your own country and the funding, and whether you have a separate account for IGF in your country, at the global level, whether there's a separate account so that we'll be able to copy, because my understanding is the forum. For you to open an account, there must be a structure. There must be something that you have to open an account. So we have managed it for 2 years. This third year, others gave us money, but this, the regulator said this year they are not giving money to the CCTLD because it's not the same thing as IGF, Nigerian IGF. That's what I want also to bring to the table, if we can share.
Okay, we're having Hussein, and we're going to answer your question, I think, as we move. Hussein.
Thank you, Christine. My name is Hossein Badran. I'm a member of the Arab IGF MAG, representing civil society and technical community. I'm currently with the Qatar Foundation. I wanted to have 2 small points to share. One regarding what was mentioned also before, the relevance of the regional and particularly the national IGFs. I think in the unfortunately, in the regional and national IGF, sometimes we shy away from the current and pressing issues that are on the table, that affect actually the internet ecosystem, that affect internet users, affect the community, and we just sit in a comfortable seat to be observers and not to be in the seat of drivers or addressing policy issues and putting another proposal, another scenario in front of the decision makers. This is quite unfortunate, and because we have then to act in a post-fact way and try to only do damage control. Maybe this is part of the culture in the Arab community, but I think this is something that, with the current climate that we have, something that has to change, and the sooner it changes, the less the damage to the internet ecosystem in our region. And I heard from the Canadian experience, there is a lawful intercept legislation. Now it's perhaps time to address it. Why don't we have something similar in our region? There are legislation on the table for surveillance, for lawful intercept. There are public RFPs for companies to buy, for governments wants to buy from surveillance equipment. Quite amusing, actually. And the internet community is just listening or observing what's happening without having any stance, which is quite damaging. The second point I'd like to make is the point of funding, and being part of the MAG, we are, this year in particular, we had challenges in funding the third instance of the Arab IGF. So I'm very interested to see how the process of funding is evolving. I was quite encouraged at this IGF that there is a IGF support association being formed. I would like to hear, I'm a member of that association, but I'd like to hear more about its proposals, its vision, how to address, how to raise funds, and if they will be able to support the regional and national IGFs. I know that we have board members on the table, so if they can enlighten us, that I think would be a very good exercise. Thank you.
Marlon, you have the floor.
Perfect timing. I'm going to ask us to think carefully about how we spend our next few minutes before I speak very briefly about the IGF USA on one of these points. We are being asked to provide summary, I'm not going to call it consensus, but sort of like what are the key messages that we want to take forward into taking stock. And I think our two rapporteurs and the moderators, and Ricardo and I can work on that. But I'm just going to note that there's so much rich information coming out that it's going to be really hard for us to make sure that you agree. So make sure you've signed up and we can read your handwriting on your email address on the sign-in sheet. So we can circle back to you, because we have a day to be able to do that. That's my first point. The second point that I want to just make is that for the IGF USA, we probably mirror, quite interesting to me, the principles that Mexico is operating from and that Canada is operating from probably are very reflected in the IGF USA. We are strongly to adamantly to stronger than that opposed to reporting structures between national and regional IGFs for ourselves, and cautious about why that would be a good idea for anyone. So I'm just giving a different perspective than perhaps we heard from others, because I think that's the point we'll need to show, is that there's different perspective on this. We also are very committed to the organic nature of the national IGFs and to their ability to really focus on local, that is national issues, and to self-determine how much they are reflected into the IGF itself. I'll just say very quickly that there's no such thing as the global IGF. There is just the IGF. I know people have started using the term national IGF, regional IGF, global IGF, but the name of the IGF is the IGF, and I mention that because we have to fight for the extension. So my one point I will just make that I hope will be a common theme that could come out of this group is building support for the extension for the IGF. And the second thing is, I think we need more work among the coordinators and others before we can think about what kind of services that could be really advantaging the national and regional IGFs. We heard a couple, and now I'm going to talk very quickly about the association. Let me say one other thing. Historically, we used to convene the coordinators at the open consultations. And I think that would be, to me, I'd like to suggest that we return to a convening of the coordinators and any of their representatives during, actually right before the open consultation, where we there could work on the sharing of information about admin, management, resources, funding, those kinds of things. We prepare for it. We don't do it in the middle of trying to plan the program, but we actually put it on the agenda. It's a commitment. We do it in a room where we have remote participation, and that means those who can come in early, blah, blah, blah. So that's one thing. On the association is founded specifically to deal with building financial support for the IGF. And as a part of that, we'll try to develop funding to help come up with supporting mechanisms for the national and regional IGF. But we don't know what that is yet. We're meeting tomorrow for the first time as a board, as a executive committee, and we'll begin to talk about that. But another area that the association is founded to address is that the funding that goes through the UN can be used to fund participation for MAG members or speakers for civil society, NGOs, technical community, and governments. It cannot be used to fund the participation of businesses from developing countries. And that is a big gap. So one of the things that the supporters organization identified in its founding principles is that for groups who cannot be funded through the normal mechanism, that should be something that could be done directly. But For much of the rest of it, it's really undetermined. We're going to be looking to the association members to guide us. I happen to have sign-up sheets. The membership fee is $25 for an individual, so if you haven't signed up yet, let us know. And we are going to need your guidance in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Marlene. Sandra, the floor is yours.
It's Sandra speaking, and I'm speaking now not on behalf on the Eurodic, but I'm speaking as a participant in the German IGF. You might be surprised that I made the same observation that there is an awareness gap among the citizens. That's not only a problem of developing countries, that's the same problem in a developed country like Germany. If I talk to them, then they actually say, why should I participate? I don't understand. And if I try to explain them, they ask me, are you a communist? That you all want us to participate in these things? Honestly, that's what they answered. Are you this sort of communist type of person? And I said, no, you have to understand, you're using the internet, you should participate. And they were, no, I elected my government, they are dealing with it. And that's actually the totally opposite of the things then we are discussing here, promoting the multi-stakeholder model. So what I want to say, this is not only an issue of developing countries like Eastern European or Africa or elsewhere. We have the same problem in Germany and probably in many other developed countries in the world. If they want to participate, if they decided, yes, that's an important issue, I want to follow up, then, and here I agree with you, Marion, that it's challenging to stay informed. I mean, we all know how fast this circulating mafia is moving, how fast one event is catching up to the other. And it's so difficult for a civil society person who wants to stay involved into the process to follow all these processes. Also because there is a lack of understandable and available material. That's what we identified for Germany, for instance. German is not covered by the 6 UN languages. How should I, who is participating in all these processes, translate all my knowledge, which is, well, I have some challenges to understand everything in English, but I have to translate that in German to explain it to my community. So this is another lack. It's not only a lack of funding, it's also a lack of resources in terms of getting informed. And I think here we are facing a similar problem than you just told us about Southeastern European countries. And then I think there is a lack of funding mechanisms, probably not a lack of funding. I think there's a whole lot of money around in the world, but I think there is a lack of how we organize to give that funding to the various invited participants. And then I want to just take up the possibility to answer your question on where did you put the account. For Eurodic we had the same, and now I'm switching back to Eurodic. For Eurodic we had the same problem. We grew up as a grassroots initiative with no account, and everybody was just paid from any organization around in the field. But if you want to put a little bit of professionalism in the whole process, you definitely need an account in order to be operable. And we were looking for a structure for a structure in a country in Europe, and probably you can do this only for regional initiatives and not for nationals, because we had the chance to look for a country where any association bylaws have the lightest and flexible possibility, which was Switzerland in that case. It was much more difficult to do it in Germany. It was so difficult to do it under Brussels law or French law. So we decided, because the law in Switzerland was the lightest one, we do it under Swiss law. This might be helpful to look around for regional initiatives. Just pick up one region or one country and study them.
My nation is Nigeria, national.
Okay, so for the Nigerian, it's going to be difficult. You have to operate under Nigerian law. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm having next Mexico, and then Hosam, and then a gentleman here.
Yeah, we'll briefly try to comment on what we did on Mexico in order to resolve this same problem of funding. Yeah, because we are a very loose group. We don't have a legal persona. We don't have We haven't been institutionalized into something more formal that comes from a regulation or a presidential decree or something like that. As I explained, we are a group of personals, of individuals that work on a personal basis. We don't even represent our business or our constituency, but we come from institutions that have, of course, like every business or like every, we have accounts and we have financial mechanisms. What we did is we have two problems. We needed to contract the buildings and the catering of the food and to contract the audiovisuals. So some organization must be in charge of signing these contracts. In that case, we convened that NIC Mexico, my organization, the one I represent, should be that endowed with signing those contracts. But since the funding will be very, very diversified, we managed to find a third party in order to pay that third party and that third party to channel all this funding from the 5 or 6 sponsors that managed to sponsor our event. And those sponsors gave the money to that third party, and that third party served as a bridge contractor between the building that we rented and the spaces and the catering. So that's the way we managed to resolve that issue, actually. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Sam?
My name is Hussam Al-Gamal. I am a member of the board of Africa ICT Alliance and vice chairman of Ittisal, is the largest business association in Egypt for IT companies, and member of the MAG of this IGF. So for me, it's the first time, in fact, to listen, interact, and follow discussion regarding regional and local IGF. So please bear with me. I have a few questions. I'll just put them. First one is the main IGF is coming from a UN mandate. Now, the all rest is good initiatives, but they do not have any institutionalized approach. So while it can survive for a short term, but then for a sustainability issue, there will be problems. So there is a real question about, should it become an NGO type, and then what is called local MAG become the board of that NGO somehow, and while respecting in that board the multi-stakeholder approach in it. Now, maybe one step back is, we were discussing this with Christine, others. I think the initiative itself is very good, but then in many of the countries there was not enough promotion, visibility of the IGF and the value proposition of the IGF. So while the good initiative is coming from few people that are trying really to put something together, but the buy-in of the different stakeholders is still missing. Some countries will have some government supporting, some countries will have some private sector supporting, but then who stopped them from going direct to the global IGF instead of having the local IGF, etc.? So the more upfront projection of the importance of having the IGF for every and each stakeholder, and maybe it would be a good idea to go in contact with representative of stakeholders. So there is a Ministry of ICT, so this is representing the government. There is a business association that represent the ICT companies. There is an academic institution that may, and accordingly you have really the different pillars, and that you can really start something, and while starting it with a mandate, you have to agree on a sustainable model, because you cannot, already the main IGF is struggling having funds. So unless, if you want to do this for the benefit of your country, then certainly you want to have a mechanism that will provide the sustainability within. How to be really inclusive, this is very important. because it's good to start an initiative, it's good to have the ownership behind it and to push it. But then, if I'm coming from an NGO, I will really be an NGO guy, or if I'm a business guy, I will. So this is why from the beginning it's very important to have the inclusion of the different stakeholder from the beginning. To have a multi-stakeholder processes within in order to come to decision. So it starts with a good IGF, a good stakeholder, but then at the end, the decisions are coming from the people within. It's a challenge, but at the same time, there is a lot of value of doing it for all stakeholders in any country. And I think if you all together, different national and regional IGF initiatives, come together and agree on the model. This is the most important thing. You being here, you can discuss a model of what is the best model of having a local IGF. What is the best processes of building it? What is the value proposition that we are going to project to our country, to our people, etc. That's it. Thank you.
Sorry.
Very much we're having, please, sir.
Oh, so I'm Toshi Tatesh from Japan, Japan Aerospace Providers Association, Vice Chair. The same thing, German and Belarus, in Japan, the IGF awareness is very low, so the activity is not so good. I can say that the IGF Japan is not so active. But so I'm thinking our association organized the IGF Japan from 2010, and so sometime we annually report something to that, but people don't have so much concern. So nowadays, so we co-organize some specific field conference or something. So that's why the IGF or local IGF or national IGF itself is very important, so should be held. But as ad hoc, we make some conference about sometimes, for example, the measure of the harmful information or illegal information on the net, so the people easy to gather. So then we co-organize as IGF Japan, then the people can aware it easier. So that's the way nowadays we do it in Japan. Thank you.
Hi, I'm going to contribute as for New Zealand National IGF, actually. So Ellen Strickland, and Net Hui is the New Zealand National IGF. And I think, it's really important to us in terms of the links that as the National IGF, that as other people have said, that it comes from the bottom up, that to us it's about the mindset of serving the internet community and having an initiative that really has that multi-stakeholders and that you have the variety of people and that it's owned by the community. But I'm really interested to explore, as Internet NZ, we engage in international internet governance, and we find, I'm interested in the modalities of the exchange and links between the two. So in building our agenda, it's easy to be in touch with the MAG and its planning, to look in the media what topics are hot and what's happening in the program decision for the Internet Governance Forum. But how we link up from New Zealand to the regional, to the international, tangibly, what do we do? How do we work with you as other initiatives is something that we seem to try lots of little things, and I'd love to have a discussion about that. We've tried, last year we had fellows from our Net Hui. We brought 4 fellows as well as some of our board members from Internet NZ, and found that, really fruitful and stimulating, but at the same time, they loved it, but they felt like, that the energy required, they have day jobs, and expecting them, getting a lot of the community to attend is something that isn't going to happen. we've tried remote hubs, and that's something that's been of real interest, but the time difference kills us, especially in New Zealand. And I mean, it's going to be bad for somebody wherever it is. And so, it often comes back to us as the organizers, to come here and sort of, I'm writing blog posts back about what's happening, and we have documents that we have sort of collaborative output documents for each session, but that's very hard. So I'm interested in things like the output document that Eurodig did, having those outcomes as potentially another modality, but just sort of listing, I think there's a lot of ideas there. One of the things I really like that Marilyn said is I think part of it's a process of us as initiatives talking about those modalities and having a bit of a network and a relationship amongst us to develop ways to do this, because I don't think there's any one right way. So,
I'm sorry, we're having Paul and then you? Paul first?
Paul, I wasn't paying attention to you, Christine, sorry, but she can go ahead and ask a question if she...
and then Africa.
My question is this. In our country, I don't even know who is a MAG for the IGF. Okay, so why not we link national regional to the MAG, the IGF MAG? Who are the people? They don't bring back information to us in our countries. I don't know whether it's the same thing in other countries. So is it possible for members of the local organizing, like the Mexican group, one of them will be picked as a MAG member, so that the person can bring the local perspective to the discussion at that level? And some of us, I don't know whether it's the same, in my own country, those that go for MAG, I don't know them, they are not part of my organizing committee, they don't do anything for us.
Yes,
I'm gonna make a kind of a point of order here, if I could. We have 12 minutes left. I think that gathering these kinds of questions might be feasible, but probably not answering them, and we probably have different views about them. But maybe if we could quickly gather additional just questions, because I think most of us have got a hard stop at 6, and we're... Oh, it is? Sorry, my apologies. Then I still think we ought to gather the questions.
Before I give the floor to Paul, maybe just to refresh our discussion a bit more. So we did talk a lot about survival techniques, if I'm going to use the terms that were put forward by Yanis and Chengetai. We did talk a lot about survival techniques on national and regional level. I think we should spend more time, like Ellen was saying, about the modalities of the process. Because, like Chengetai was saying, it's a two-way process, and here are ideas coming out. The idea of linking MAG members to the regionals and nationals has actually been put forward in the workshop. Unfortunately, Ayman has left, but the workshop on 9:40 in the morning, one of the ideas that were put forward is why not actually have some representatives from the MAG come from the coordinators or members of the bodies that are on a national and regional level. Other ideas that were put forward on this table today by Subi was to have a main session maybe during the IGF that is focusing on national regions. So those are ideas. Maybe we should explore more of those now and discuss them a bit more. So Paul, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Christine. My name is Paul Rendick, and I work with the RIPE NCC, and we are involved in actually quite a few different IGF areas, be them national or regional. I can name but a few initiatives in Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, Azerbaijan, Russia, Eurodig, and the Arab IGF. We provide not only funding for all of these that I've mentioned, but also resources from our organization, which I feel is a much better use of anything that we can give. I wanted to make a comment to a few of the things that I've heard here, and maybe a comment that brings something on what I think it would be good for sustainability going forward. First of all, I like the idea that you're bringing forward, that it's probably nice to see if you could use one model and share that. I don't really share that opinion, because I think that the richness that we have is that the approaches are different. And I think that this is something we can always learn from each other using one thing. I don't think one model fits all, so I don't think that would be very possible. What I do believe, though, is that dialogue is wonderful, but good governance at home should lead to some kind of demonstrated achievement in either sharing knowledge or capacity building or whatever that particular national or regional NOG feels is important to achieve. And I think that for RIPE NCC, I can speak for my organization and what I think is a good way going forward. We've had a lot of these IGF, be them local or the global initiatives, happening for quite some time now. I love the dialogue. But now, I think what's important for my organization or for the technical community portion that my organization represents is that we actually, that good dialogue starts at home, right? And good governance starts at home, and only then can you bring something to a global effort when you at home understand what you've shared or any capacity building that you've built out of this. So our concentration really is on what we can do in the area of public and private partnership, or what we can do even in our own technical community in these national or regional kind of efforts to bring something positive for movement going forward. So I think this is the thing that we will be concentrating on. And I think on top of that, when you look at the regional structures, or having worked in the Eurodig area and having worked in the Arab IGF area, I think what we need to make sure you do is you need to fuel the different stakeholders to keep them engaged. I think there is a natural propensity for a group to maybe show some kind of leadership, which can be quite detrimental in how you get the others to join in or feel that they have a sort of ownership to contribute, a sustained contribution, because this energy can fizzle out very quickly. And I think we've seen that, I've seen that personally in some of the different areas. How do we get that energy back up again? So one thing that I can say is positive, and I know it's setting a precedent, and I'm sure my email box is going to fill with emails when I say this. We have just signed an MOU, or are about to. I have to just put my name on all of this. Sandra's looking at me. We have, are about to sign an MOU, a 3-year MOU between the RIPE NCC and Eurodig, where we're committing resources, quite a lot of them, but not only financial, but also from the staff side, in being a partner with Eurodig moving forward and making sure that RIPE NCC could be an organization that can bring that technical community bit into Eurodig. And I'm so happy that Eurodig has actually approached us for this, and we've actually went right back into our community. It won't only be the RIPE NCC, but we'll get the technical community interested in their efforts. And I think that's something that we think is positive with Eurodig, and I hope that the RIPE NCC can do that with other groups as well. Thank you.
I did want to make a comment about the idea of there being designated seats for MAG members that come from either the national or the regional IGFs. I'll just say, speaking for the business community right now, because I am appointed from the business community, we would not support that approach right now, because we think that the diversity of participation, but to the issue of the not having the flow of information back into the community, that is, I think, a big challenge where MAG members, a major responsibility of a MAG member is to work with their own community to bring information then into the planning for the IGF. I think there's a different, maybe, if I could look at it a little bit differently, Mary, as what is the process by which we ensure the better flow of information and access to information, and having the coordinators have a regularized attendance, or someone from the national and regional IGFs having a regularized attendance at the open consultation sessions, I think would probably actually give more of what you're looking for. We have established, for instance, criteria that MAG members cannot submit workshop proposals. MAG members are supposed to limit their participation to no more than 3 events because they have MAG duties. So, you know, when you think about the fact that this is a very heavy workload, giving additional work between the national and regionals. So if we think about it as an information flow problem, and try to come up then with further work on what the ideas are to address, because the question, I think, is a very valid question.
Marlene, Laura.
Thank you. Laura Hutchison from the UK IGF. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points that a number of people have made. Firstly, starting with Paul's suggestion, obviously reflecting the value in the discussions. I think that's, it's a really brilliant point, and it's exactly why what the IGF is intended for. There seems to be a current shift towards having a more of an outcome-based approach, such as with the Eurodig kind of outcome document. I haven't quite thought this through, so it is slightly kind of thinking out loud. It may be an opportunity, sort of depending on what happens maybe with the IGF this year in terms of outputs and exactly where that goes, whether a more issue-based approach through the regional and national IGFs could be an opportunity. The first half of the session here, kind of looking at all the issues that everyone's talking about, there's a great opportunity to be able to share knowledge and information and best practice between ourselves. We've got a pool of resource people. I can't remember, someone made the point earlier about that you underestimate the power of regional and national IGFs as a pool of resources. We have a pool of people that can input into sessions based on topics or issues. If inputting from regional and national directly into the MAG doesn't work, then perhaps inputting a list of topics as to these are the topics that have been discussed regionally and nationally and perhaps should be represented on the global IGF agenda as well as through resource people might be an idea. Thank you.
Edmund.
Edmund Chung here. So on that particular topic, actually, I guess the Asia Pacific RIGF has been, I guess, lucky in a way we've always had the support from APNIC and of course from us from .Asia, and that's probably one of the reasons why we are able to keep up the process. I wanted to pick on, actually, the reason why I put my hand up, I wanted to go back to what Marilyn was mentioning and what was discussed a little bit earlier about the relationship with the, well, including the MAG as well. I think that's probably a good, interesting thought where Marilyn mentioned that some more regular participation from the regionals and the nationals at those open consultations, because being on the MAG, I don't even know exactly how it's formed and the process, how people are picked. I don't think that's more important. More important is that the input comes into during the discussion. So whether you're a MAG member or not, I don't think I don't think it should matter at that level. But how do we try to encourage people to actually be there, whether not only be there, but if they can't be there, remotely participate? It's probably something that we should explore further, how to encourage that interaction better.
If I may intervene as well quickly. Well, MAG meetings are more or less open nowadays, and they're actually webcasted, open consultation. So maybe it's an issue to look at is how to support regionals to send someone over to the consultations. And Yanis was mentioning there's an early consultation this year that's coming probably end of November or beginning of December. So this is something to look at. One other idea that I want to put on the table, it's a discussion that I had earlier today with some active member from the Asia Pacific region, is that we are having a 10-year anniversary, literally, next year. So maybe we should look within our national and regional initiatives what could be done actually to re-energize this energy you're talking about. This could be a good thing to look at to recapture this energy again. So those are ideas. So Paul, you want to come in?
Yes, I actually wanted to make 2 points, one to yours and one to the one you just made, Christine. That was a great point, and I wanted to expand on that a bit. I think what I'm missing, if I actually, because I am on the MAG, and I am looking for what's important in the different regions. I mean, the region that we represent is 76 countries, very diverse, very, it's all over the show. Fantastic, but how do you gather the points of what's important in a Eurodig and what's important in an Arab IGF or an Azerbaijani IGF? It's all a little bit different. I think one of the things that's missing is some kind of central repository that when an IGF, be it national or regional, takes place, a short summary of the topical issues of that IGF are brought forward somewhere in a space where they can be collected and people can take a look at what those issues are. I don't think people are aware of what's important at Eurodig or what's important at the AP IGF that you've got going. Where does that information get fed? So where is a central repository where we can bring some of these things together? The second thing is, Christine, I love the point of finding some way of funding people to come to the open consultation that are regionally based, that can feed in and help the MAG understand the local issues. We know that that's a big point even in the Arab IGF, if I can make that point. I know that the RIPE NCC does have funds available to actually bring members of one IGF community to another. And we're very serious about that. We have brought people from Eurodig to the Arab IGF, from Arab IGF to the Eurodig. We love this. We think this is very important to get the different messages of either the regions or from a national perspective somewhere else. So these are 2 points that I'm hoping can be expanded a bit more because I believe that the funding would be great, but a repository for people to be able to go and see the issues, I think needs to be brought forward. Thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question? How many people here read the reports of the national and regional initiatives? No, I'm serious. How many of you read all of them? No. But that's my point. I think the recommendation that Paul just made is we need a synthesized executive summary that, so the reports all stay there, but then you have the 1 page per initiative with color pictures that makes it sexy. Do I take that as a recommendation? Maybe I wouldn't say sexy, but more.
Actually, to this point, since the webpage of the Global IGF has information about regional and national IGFs, I think that place should be the repository where the executive summary or the main points are stated there. The reports and the detailed reports is something else, but the summary needs to be linked to each of these IGFs, regional or national.
I want to take back Marilyn. The business constituency believes in diversity.
Business community.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's community.
No, sorry.
It's business community. Believes in diversity. Nobody is opposing to the diversity. The ideas will come from all over. Even at the local level, the business constituency or business community should be part of the local organizing committee. If that business community is part of it, they go to MAG, they bring back idea from MAG, and when we're organizing our own, the diversity multiplies and enriches whatever we do. So I agree with, I don't know your name, I'm sorry. Christine. Okay, Christy, that one way or the other, I'm sorry, please don't laugh at me. One way or the other, we would just have to link. I don't see us, disjointed IGF, regional IGF, national, IGF there. So there must be somewhere the linkages will come. And when we were planning our national IGF, we normally look at what the IGF is saying, then bring the local environment, bring our local need, bring our hot topical issues in our country, then we adapt it to be able to organize our local IGF. Okay, so my point is that I think it's taken already, that there must be a way that we get that linkage. If it is possible, when the call for consultation comes out, coordinators of local IGF or regional IGF should be contacted They may have even their own funding to come. They may not need funding from anywhere. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, thank you. I'm having Canada and then Sandra.
I quite support the idea of having very short, perhaps bullet point summaries of what happens at each IGF, and I think it would be a good idea if some kind of template were developed that everyone could follow so that it's a standard idea. I'm not entirely sure I would be supportive of a centralized repository. I think I'd rather see more of a clearinghouse for information that links out, because you know, we post, part of the Canadian Internet Forum, when it's over, we post all of the videos of all of the discussions online, and there's a lot of rich content there that you may not see if it's in a repository, but if it's a clearinghouse pointing you out to these resources, it might be better served.
On the question who is reading the reports, I must admit I don't read the reports from all the regions. I do follow the discussion, what is going on here, but I only read or produce the reports for the Eurodic. But what I think the IGF website could be the place for governments, for policy deciders, for business people to visit in order they want to find out something about any region in the world. For instance, if a new government in any region is elected and the parliamentarians, they like to catch up on what has been discussed within the community, the IGF website could actually be the place where they go and get the information what's going on within their own region. Or another example, if a business entity likes to do some investments in a certain region, they could actually go up to the IGF website and visit the reports, the latest reports, and get some real good information about what's going on in this community. For this reason, and I agree with, this is really disturbing.
It's really weird.
For this reason here, I agree with Mark that it would be good to have at least some obligatory way of a matrix or a way of submitting these things to make it really easy with a very low hurdle. On the other hand, we should also give each region the opportunity to present their outcomes in the way they think it will be understood by their community. Let it be a PowerPoint or a brochure or whatever is the best way to do it in the special region. Thank you.
So I'm going to try to, if we're going to try to think about concrete things, I'm going to offer two thoughts here. One is, I think what we're talking about is, in order to improve the impact flow both ways between, and I really want to caution people just from, I'm not speaking for anyone else other than the United States in this case, but we are a very diverse country, and it's very unlikely that we would agree to report to another entity. So, and I think that's true for Mexico, and I think that's probably true for Canada. So just a little comment there. The initiatives are all very diverse, but what I'm hearing in terms of commonality is having a easy to use, look good, not too expensive to print, 10, 12, 15 page, or even 25 page, depending on, or 30, depending on the number, but that, all right, but the point is, Paul, I think most everybody is going to want to, if each of the initiatives is going to want to have a page. So let's just say you thought about that. Then I think we ought to be thinking that the resource that's needed is editorial support, as opposed, so the content gets submitted, and that we want to say that one of the supports that would be needed would be the editor copywriting type support that would turn it into a nice, easy document that could be downloaded, etc. That's a resource request, and I think it's a very valid resource request. The other thing that I think most of you were not aware of, and I would say we were not aware of at IGF USA, is that we would be able to have a website, a web page, and listserv support from the Secretariat. That would be very, very helpful to us, and probably very helpful to a lot of the smaller entities. So I'm just kind of thinking we should continue to kind of gather the idea of what the calls to action or the, but the final thing that I want to ask us to go back to at some point is, this year the chair invited us to respond to a very important document to provide examples of the impact of the IGF. He got only 15 responses, and they were not from us, for the most part. He's asked us to consider how the national and regional IGFs, would we perhaps take, I don't know, an invitation from the chair to take up a topic or to take up a request to respond to something. I think we need to spend a few minutes talking about how that would work, because an invitation from the chair of the MAG to, let's use a specific example, to have a session that is relative to follow up to the Net Mundial principles. If it were an invitation, we would probably welcome it at IGF USA, and our steering committee would decide whether or not to do it. But I don't see how direction at this point could come from the MAG of the IGF into the national and regional IGFs. But he's asking us to consider what kind of formal request for information might work, or what would we think would work, and we need to spend a few minutes on that.
Okay, Marlene, I think, I think what we should maybe think a bit about is when we receive such an invitation. So it's, again, I like to look at it as both ways. So we receive an invitation and probably go back to our communities and try to see what we can do with that. But again, I think what we can do here around this table now is maybe suggests how are we going to gather whatever is going to come from the regions, and how is that supposed to impact what's going to happen on the global level. Because I do love the idea of having short messages come out from the different initiatives, but then who's going to read them and do what with them? And are they going to come on time for the next IGF agenda to be shaped in a way that addresses the needs of the different regions? So I'd like us maybe to spend a bit of discussion around what do we propose to the MAG, to the chair of the MAG, to the stock-taking session, to take our whatever is coming from the wealth of different regions into account. So anyone? Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. Actually, I'm with you, Marilyn, here. I think that it would be great, okay, speaking as a MAG member, it would have been great when we came together as a MAG, before we even came together, that there was this document that came from outcomes of what had happened in the different national and regional initiatives that would be sent to me that said, hello, you're a MAG member, you're coming on board, you've got particular skills, hopefully, that you're bringing to this crew. Here's a document of what's going on around the world, and that's important to the different regions here. And as a MAG member, when you come together with the rest of the MAG, wouldn't it be lovely for you to take this as a document that you would read that helps you to kind of understand some of the regional initiatives or things that people are concentrating on from the regions? I would love something like that as a MAG member, right? I think the second thing, and that asking for that resource, Marilyn's right, we're asking for a resource to help compile that. So that is a concrete request. How that's going to look, I guess there can be some kind of committee formed into that. I'm not really quite sure if we have the time here to delve into what that would look like, or what the responsibilities would be there, or what they wouldn't. The second thing is that I still believe that we need more people in the MAG and in the open consultations that champion the regional and national initiatives, because there aren't enough. I mean, I know that when I hit that mic as a MAG member, I'm always pushing for some kind of regional effort, be it the Arab regional one or whatever, and saying it's so important to get the stuff from home first before we come to the global scene. But there's not anyone that really champions that inside the secretariat or inside that structure. So I think that that kind of a resource needs to be there. What exactly it would be, I'm not sure, but I would love to see someone that pushes that as a cheerleader or a champion a bit more.
So what is the sorry, I'm sorry. What of the report we sent to the Secretariat? They've been asking us to send report to the Secretariat.
On the website, Marilyn, on the website, one of the requirements that is in order to be listed on the as an IGF initiative, a national and regional IGF initiative, there's certain criteria you need to follow. And that's one of the criteria is you need to do a report each year. But it's not there's no defined format. There's a little bit of information you have to provide, but it's really pretty flexible, and the reports vary. I mean, are we asking to make it more defined beyond what it is? Because we're trying not to provide burdens to the...
I think one of the ideas were to have actually a template, maybe in a way that can be filled. And if I recall right, we had something of that last year. We had actually like a questionnaire that was to be filled by the different, and there were concrete questions that were asked. How many participants? How do the stakeholders look? What are the topics that you discussed? So maybe something along that, a bit shorter, because it was a bit lengthy last year, maybe a bit shorter. But again, to do what? So to pass to MAG members, here's an idea. Let's listen more. Right. Hamid.
Sorry again, I had to be out, and I may say things that have been already discussed, but when I hear that some group needs to send a report to another group, immediately comes to mind something that says, we're gonna do X with the report that you sent, or we're looking for Y in the report that you sent. I don't know this feedback. I don't know what happens with the report. And to ask for something, it would be nice to know, and I'm sorry, this is me. And probably the other members of the group know better than I do. But what happens with that report? What feedback goes back and forth? You know, for example, the MAG receives this report from the regional IGF, for example, the Arab IGF. They look at it, they look for X, Y, and Z, and then they send back information, they request more data, they advise, they help. I mean, that to me, it needs to be cleared, and if it's clear, I apologize, because it's probably my ignorance.
Sorry, it's Marilyn again. Ahmad, I need to clarify this. So the coordinators used to meet, and the criteria that was established was worked out across the coordinators. It's very minimal. And the criteria, in order to be listed as an IGF initiative, is to provide a report of what you're doing. I don't understand what you mean by what are we doing with it. It is so that you can receive recognition and be listed on the website. It's pretty minimal.
Maybe the question to be more constructive is how can we actually use those reports to impact the IGF? And here's the thing to take from the question, and I think that's worth looking at, because I mean, one good idea that Paul said that if we have it short and simple, we can actually give it to MAG members, and then we can suggest that MAG members should actually, when they come from a region, at least read those of this region and be actually proactive in, you know, communicating with them. That's one part. But on the other hand, maybe from my personal experience here, I can say that what I've seen impact the agenda of the IGF was the presence of people that actually carry the flag of the region. So I'll take from the example of the Eurodic. Many of the modalities that are used at the Eurodic were actually incorporated into the IGF, like the flash sessions that I think they initiated at Eurodic, many of those issues actually were brought up, but they weren't brought up through reports, they were brought up through the people that were sitting there around the table and giving those ideas. So,
so you're saying the presence of the representatives, at least of the regional MAG, let me stay at the regional MAG, at the MAG is important. And both way reporting is necessary, and it's good. So we need to improve that as quickly as possible.
someone wants to come in.
Just to clarify, we're talking about at the consultations. They're open meetings. The MAG is there, but so are many other people. Is that that's what we mean?
Yeah, well, of course, we don't have actually influence on who will be on the MAG, so this is not something that we actually can, we would like to see more linkage between the MAG and the regionals, but we at least we can say more participation from the regional coordinators. Not everyone has a MAG-like function, but at least from the conveners, the coordinators, even the participants at the public consultations that are there. Yes. At the consultations.
Just to clarify, you keep using the word regionals. We are talking about both nationals and regionals.
I'm sorry, you guys.
Okay,
Nationals and regionals.
okay.
You're very right. So it's, I always find it very long to say, but let me always say nationals, and then you'll understand I'm also saying regionals.
Just for my education, please, how is MAG constituted? Please, just for my education. I think some of us don't know how it's constituted, first, how you select members, second, and what region, what diversities you put into place to select MAG.
Okay, my name is Marilyn Cade. Let me see if I can do this quickly. There are 54, 56 members. I think that's close. 50% of them are government seats. Those are regionally distributed. The remaining 50% of the seats are split between the technical community, the private sector, and the civil society. Both the technical community and civil society are / academia. So academia can come in through either the technical community allocation of seats, and it's an allocation of numbers, and each of the stakeholder sectors has to put together a process, and the CSTD working group on improvements to the IGF set out criteria that sort of laid out the idea that the process that each group established needs to be open and transparent. There needs to be geographic and gender diversity. It doesn't say 50% of this or 50% of that. It says diversity. And each of the groups runs a process. I can describe the business process. You can probably describe the technical community. The civil society runs 2 consultation processes, and 2 different groups of civil society provide names. The names go to the Secretariat. They end up going to the Secretary General. Mary, it's 8 or 9 seats per group. I'm not doing the math very well. And then those have to be, within that group, geographically diverse. And the goal is to have the term no more than 3 years, but the appointment is 1 year at a time. Not everybody stays on for multiple years. We had a problem last year, in the past, where we had people in seats for 6 or 7 years, and that has been fixed. So there's a rotation. The idea being that 3 years would be sort of optimal, and there might be 1 year exception, but the decision is ultimately taken by the Secretary General. You have to show support from your stakeholder sector. I don't mean stakeholder group like at ICAM, but from your community. So you need to be able to show that you have support. If you're business, you need to be able to show that you have been supported by a wide group of business.
thank you very much for this education. Haven't implemented that for some years, and you find out that those that represent your region are not part of your process in your region. So that's why we're bringing up this idea that it is good, it is necessary that those that are actually implementing and spreading your gospel of multi-stakeholder approach of internet governance should be part of designing, part of bringing back information to the locals. That's my point. That's the point I'm making. That it shouldn't be a disconnect between a MAG member from my region and what I do in my region, or what I do in my local or national level. That's all I brought to this. Well, I think you may have to look at it again, whether it still works well.
I'm just going to make a quick response. Remember when the MAG was set up, the national and regional initiatives didn't exist. So one thing to think about is this is feedback about with the growth and strengthening. The second point, Mary, is a major criteria is supposed to, for the MAG members, is supposed to be that they work with their sector. So perhaps there's the other issue. This is touchy, Paul, but I'm going to do it. Perhaps the other issue is how satisfied is your yes, how satisfying is your representation and outreach? And can you really take on the work that is required? And if you can't, then how does feedback get provided so that somebody just doesn't stay in a position, but the position is opened up? That's kind of touchy, but I think I got it out.
No, thank you, that's important. So, yes.
Just to make sure I understand Mary's proposal, are you saying that at least at the global MAG, there needs to be a representation and exchange of, let's say representation and both-way exchange from the regional MAGs to make sure that these people that are on the seats of the MAG that are from a certain region are connected to the MAG that are in the region. They're not necessarily separate. And even though it was designed at the time differently, we probably need to propose that at least those representation, at least one or two people, whatever from the region, are there, are part of or condoned by or whatever by the regional MAG to make sure connection is there, representation is there, feedback back and forth, representing the initiatives, representing the projects, and make sure that the global MAG is really taking into account those regional activities. The regional MAG, Marilyn, it's okay, like you should listen to us sometimes. You know, you know, I'm just asking if this is what it is.
You're just asking me, I will respond to you. Yeah, go ahead, Mary, quickly, yeah.
The response is this, that currently there's a disconnect between IGF and the regional initiatives because the MAG members of the IGF they are not part of the local organizing or implementing committee of the national or regional. Well, regional maybe, but when you come to national, if somebody from my country is a MAG member, at least the person should know what we are doing. He should be able to be part of what we do at the local level. He should bring back the message and tell us, yeah, this is what it should be. Most time we go back to search what is IGF doing so that we'll be able to follow IGF instead of just having somebody that will educate us.
No,
so there shouldn't be a disconnect.
I think this is, we've clearly hit on an issue that's quite complicated because, and there isn't necessarily a solution you're proposing, but it's about that relationship between, as you said, the initiatives, the MAG, how the wider IGF has done. So, I mean, I think, open consultation is part of it. Yes, Manuel?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that even though I agree with Mary's comment, I would like to tone it down a little bit because we may need to look to specific cases. I would like to say that at least in the Latin American region and the Caribbean, our MAG representatives, Carolina Guerra and Fatima Cambronero, and our Mexico representative, Marilena Diaz, are very in touch with our IGF initiative, and Carolina and Fatima are in fact endowed with the responsibility of building the LAC IGF. So at least I don't have any complaints on that respect. So we should be looking at that issue very specifically and very case-oriented.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Reinforce the point I was trying to make. We got to make the expectation clear if you're a MAG member that part of your responsibility is that linkage back and forth. And that is the thing I'm really thinking is an important thing to continue to reinforce as a message.
Thank you. Just to add one thing, because I know what Marilyn explained, I was from the first MAG. I was on the first MAG, as you remember. And there was no regionals. But hearing now Mary and Ahmad, I think we could maybe recommend something for the selection of the MAG in the second stage, if it was extended after the 10th year, hopefully, maybe to take in consideration that when you select the MAG members, what Marley said important, they should be in connection with their societies, let's say, but at the same time, maybe when selecting them on the MAG, to see if there is originally some regional members, maybe to involve them, or at least put one of them or two on the MAG, something like this. I know it's the UN decision at the end, but something like this.
Thank you. So I'm aware we've been going for over 3 hours now, and we're supposed to wrap up by 6. So I wanted to propose, we have our rapporteurs, Laura and Sandra have been working hard to try to capture the 2 segments and the messages, particularly in this last segment, the messages and recommendations that we want to take forward into the taking stock session. And there's been some really key concrete stuff here, so which we'd like the opportunity for them to feed back to you, what we've captured and get some comments, and then Marilyn and Ricardo are going to be taking that to the session, to the taking stock session, so a chance to sort of wrap up with them about what they're taking forward. All right, so I'll hand over to the rapporteurs.
Thank you. So Sandra and I have kind of worked against the 2 sections, so I've sort of focused more on the issue section, and Sandra's going to lead on the second section, where I think her notes were a bit more comprehensive than mine. So when we opened, starting with the issues, there was a lot of focus around how the political situation in a country affects the issues for discussion, and how a regional national IGF is a good opportunity to showcase the national model or a democratic process in the country. In terms of issues that have been discussed, I've tried to kind of collate these in terms of what was discussed across each issue. There's a lot of overlap. There was a lot of focus on government surveillance, and then in line with that, kind of issues around civil liberty, privacy, and human rights. The internet for driving social and economic change. I think a number of initiatives have discussed issues around those sort of areas. Child protection was another headline issue, as was public access, capacity building, and the digital divide. Issues around digital literacy, net neutrality, and then a lot of topic, I know it was discussed a lot at Eurodig, was data access by ISP, sort of data protection type issues. Spam legislation, issues around openness, so covering kind of rights, responsibility, local content, and multilingualism. Network filtering, IPv6, a lot of discussion around youth IGFs and the kind of overlap on the issue-based approach from a youth perspective. And then there's the more sort of external internet governance kind of issues, so topics around new GTLDs and the governance landscape in general with WSIS +10, Net Mundial, the ITU Plenipot, the IANA transition and ICANN accountability, as well as frameworks for national IGFs and the kind of governance model in a national or regional arena. I think that kind of sums up most of the topics in the first session. Just hand over to Sandra.
Thank you. As for the second part, I took my notes and tried to summarize where we at least could or I took notes of those things where I realized that they are in common for all of the things, because I think it makes no sense to list all the topics. So what I see, we have more or less in all countries an awareness gap in the civil society, academical sector and governments. I think this was the main message. It is a challenge for civil society to be informed and stay informed about the various issues. Either it's the timing issue for countries like New Zealand, or if it's just a language issue, or even others. Then there is a lack of funding mechanisms, not necessarily funding, but funding mechanisms to get people more engaged into the whole debate. There is a lack of understanding the need to participate and engage from many people, because as it was said on some points, sometimes people think that, okay, I'm just delegating it to my government, I elected them and they will deal with that issue, but no, they are not. And so there is not really the awareness that the multi-stakeholder approach is not understood, and this is sometimes also a cultural issue, as our colleague from Japan mentioned, that this type of how you deal with things is totally new for this sort of culture in Asia sometimes. Then I would like to catch up what Paul Rendek mentioned. We national IGFs should try to create alliances with leaders of their respective community. If you have an alliance with a leader or a partnership with an organization which brings in then the community, because we all do not have the resources to reach out to broad communities, so we need those key leaders which brings their community in and make them actually part of the whole process. And then the last part of the discussion was about the linkage between national, regional IGFs and the global IGF. And there was consensus that better participation in the regional, participation from the regionals and nationals in the global debate is required. There should be a place where we collect all the outcomes from each region, and it has to be discussed how this could look like, either if it's an extensive book or if we just post the reports, or if we edit a brochure which combines all the things. I think this is something which we can bring up for discussion. And then I think the last part of the discussion, and I'm not really sure if there's consensus in the room, that there is the proposal on the table that the MAG could be actually extended and by representatives from regional IGFs, so that they actually become a member of the MAG. Maybe not all of them, but maybe some of them. But this is a proposal I just heard, and I'm not really sure if there is consensus about this in the room, or if you would just like to bring that forward. Thank you.
I would say I don't support that as a consensus statement. I support that we should report out that was discussed. I'm not sure, though, if you meant extended or that it should include, and that was why do you mean extended, which would mean to add more seats, or did you mean that the representation should include? And it could go either way, but I just wanted to point out that extended might mean adding more seats, while the other approach would be to incorporate.
I don't really care how to do this. I mean, if we need more seats for 3 more people...
Let's have a bit of discussion from the floor, actually. Laura, yeah.
Sorry. I agree with Marilyn there. I probably wouldn't be in favor of saying there was consensus to extend the MAG. To be honest with you, I'm not even really quite sure. I mean, yes, it was discussed, and sure, it needs to be brought forward because it was discussed, but I personally I'm not really quite sure if I'm seeing where that would be. I think there needs to be a lot more discussion on how you would put something regional or national inside of the MAG. I think that there are other ways to do that rather than saying, let's extend the MAG, because I think that in most cases, because if you heard what Marilyn had described as the process for choosing people to be on the MAG, wow, it's pretty complex. And she didn't even go down into each one of the groups, right? When you get in there, you probably find that you have most people somehow involved in these kinds of areas anyway.
All right. I'd just like to suggest, I think we clearly don't have consensus on that, but I do think that there's been an important discussion about the linkages between IGF initiative coordinators and MAG members, and I'd propose something along those lines, and that there needs to be further discussion. So I liked that bit that we had about another issue that we said there's a few potential solutions to this, we need to have further discussion. I'd propose something along those lines and ask for some further comment. Yeah.
I don't think there's any consensus. It's just me that brought it to the table, right? And it's a concern for me because of what I experience, what is on the ground in my own region, all right? So I'm not saying that there's a consensus, but it's something you should think about. The process of selecting MAG previously, before you have this, before this regional in the national initiatives came up, you need to rethink on the process. I think that's what I think I want to bring to the table. You should do everything, whether it still is, should it still be that way, or you should think about, now that they are on ground firmly, everybody, now more countries are aware of the IGF, and every country, if you want them to go and regulate the internet, leave them out. Then they will go and regulate the internet for you.
Thank you. No, I think that's definitely should be captured, that it's about reconsideration. We have a few comments, starting with Laura here.
Thanks, Ellen. I was just going to sort of pick up on, basically kind of say sort of what you were saying. I think with my rapporteur hat on, it's clear there wasn't consensus, but I think it's important to make the note that maybe we would like to see more linkages between the regional and national IGFs and the MAG in some way that we couldn't decide on. And maybe that participation from the MAG members should be encouraged in regional and national IGFs if they exist in their area. Thank you.
All right. Yep, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Thank you. I agree. For sure, there is no consensus. But at the same time, to answer maybe some of Marilyn's questions, no, not to add more members. I think it's just. I think as I understood, I tried to summarize, but seems I confused everyone instead of summarizing. For me, when I wanted to summarize, I meant when to choose maybe the same different constituencies, as Marilyn explained, from the business, from so on, maybe to try to have some of them already existing in the region, something like this, which is to combine, to find it, but not to extend for sure. So this is maybe the...
Can I suggest, I mean, obviously, as Marilyn outlined, the process of the selection is something that the UN does and the Secretary General does, and that perhaps what we could suggest is that in relation to the statement we've made, that as part of the review of the IGF, that, you know, considering the MAG in light of IGF initiatives could be done. Yeah.
I think encouraging MAG members is a bit not capturing maybe the discussion. I think we should talk more about the responsibility of MAG members towards.
Yeah, that's really good. That was definitely echoed. Yeah.
Okay, actually, I believe regional representation is paramount, is very important. But if I have to choose between stressing regional representation and stakeholder representation, I believe stakeholder representation is even more important than having regional representation. actually, to be very honest, I wasn't aware that the MAG seats, 50% of the MAG seats are for the governments. I believe that's not equal footing. Hence, if I would need to choose between regional representation and stakeholder representation, I believe I would like to stress out the later. I mean, it's just my thoughts, off the top of my head.
Let's be clear on one thing. Nobody is saying that there should be regional representation without taking into account the stakeholder representation. That's one. Two, we're not saying anything about the number of the people on the MAG. They could be 54, they could be 40, they could be 60. Whenever a decision is made to extend, IGF after beyond 2015, there needs to be a rethinking of how the selection process has to make sure, and I'm disagreeing with to make sure that the regional representation is there. But to make sure regional representation is there connected with the regional MAGs. They cannot be, I mean, listen, if we're going to grow this thing to be something useful for the world, going in the same direction, we cannot continue this disconnect.
Your point is taken, and I think what's important that we discussed is when the MAG was originally set up, these didn't exist. So that isn't, it wasn't there previously, so we're making a point. We've got a couple of comments here.
Yeah, Edmund Chung here. Not suggesting this to be what is in the report or anything, but just thinking out loud here on this particular subject. We keep talking about linkage and representation. Thinking out loud suggests the concept of liaisons. This is the way that we wrap it around might be easier for people to understand. And the liaison may be official or unofficial basis. It may be already a MAG member. It may be some other person, right? I mean, that's maybe that kind of concept merits some thinking about.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. And I think that's why it's important we maybe capture some of these things and that we want to have that ongoing discussion on this. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Actually, I can't speak for the other stakeholders, but I know very well how the technical community does their selection. And in this, it is already stated that we do have the geographical balance coming from the technical community. Like I said, I can't speak for the others, but it's in the document, very clear. So although the UN does rubber stamp this at the end and accepts the people that are brought forward, it's very much done from the stakeholders who they're choosing to put forward to the to the UN. And the UN's not going to say, wait, the technical community, we don't know that guy. He's not really a V6 person. They're not going to do that, are they? So, for instance, as an example. So if you feel that you need to change the MAG configuration and that this needs to be something that's stressed there, you must go to the constituency and say, we need to redo the way we choose this particular group of people that are represented on the MAG. Thank you.
So just to clarify, we're talking about where you say the regional sort of geographic distribution, but that's not the same thing as initiatives. And I mean, we've mentioned where you have the geographic person and then there's no one within that region that's involved in an initiative. So is that the disconnect?
Sorry, can I just answer that?
Yeah,
Look,
please.
that probably is the case from the government perspective. I could probably see something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I look at the MAG members that are coming from the civil society, business, and the technical community, I would be very surprised if any one of them had never been to a regional or national IGF effort. I think that it would be quite surprising how they would possibly get voted on from the community to sit in a global setting. So,
all right, no, that's interesting, and I think it's another mechanism, but all the more reason this is a discussion I think we need to take forward. I wanted to raise one other thing, which was about us as a group and our engagement in the consultations. It was something that got raised about that there used to be a meeting prior and to, for sort of coordination, but also then to encourage engagement in the MAG meetings.
Verify. The coordinators used to meet at the consultations. And we had a time slot, and Chengetai was there with us, and the Secretariat was there with us, and that was what so we didn't meet to coordinate, we met to share information and resources, but I was proposing we think about at least piloting that and trying to do it at one of the upcoming consultations, but to make sure it's done in a room with remote participation capability, because it's a disaster for those who can't travel. And it needs to be done outside of the schedule of the consultation, or people won't be able to participate in it. I just wanted to...
Thank you. No, thank you for clarification. I think being outside was what I meant. How does the room
Sorry,
feel about that?
we're still asking the coordinators which one you refer to, please. We decide.
There is a question here. Who are the coordinators?
Coordinators, yes,
You said the coordinators. Who are the coordinators?
Okay, every initiative has to identify a key point of contact. That's how you submit your reports. And there's an open list that you can sign up on. I wasn't able to get a printout of it, but each of the initiatives has to have a point of contact that they give to the Secretariat. And so, Mary, it's up to each of the initiatives on who that is. But when the coordinators met, it was always an open meeting.
If I take the West African IGF, we have national focal points. That's how we manage the West African IGF initiative. We have national focal points, and we signed some paper to say we are committed to doing to be a coordinator. So everything that has got to do with West African IGF, it goes to that focal point. But there's nothing like that because as we said, the MAG started before the other initiatives. But we are in a new era, so we need to reform. So we are proposing a reform to you, that you reform the MAG or the processes to accommodate those that are coming up, to be able to be part of your own process.
To be clear what was being proposed, the idea was that whoever is responsible as the key contact point for the initiatives would have a meeting in conjunction with the public consultation. So I'm not sure what was...
I'm not sure, I don't know whether I made points clear. I gave you an example of the West African IGF. In West African IGF, he is a national focal point from Benin. I am a national focal point from Nigeria. That is the group that organizes the West African IGF coordination. So I don't know whether you are referring to the same coordinating group.
Yes, those are the coordinators that actually correspond with the Secretariat of the IGF on everything that is related to that initiative. So if it's the African IGF, it would be the coordinator of the African IGF. If it's the West African IGF is listed as an initiative, then it would be a coordinator from the West African IGF. It depends, but those are the ones that send the reports, are on the IGF regional mailing list, and basically have the contact with the Secretariat.
And so I think I would be right, Mary, in understanding that because of the way that Africa has really deployed such a rich, you have national initiatives, you have sub-regional, and you have regional. So you could potentially, from the continent, have Benin, you would have Nigeria, then you might have the East Africa coordinator, and then you might have the African coordinator. So you may have 12 participants in the coordinators group, while, right? Yeah.
Yes, you had a question?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it was a really very interesting discussion. And what I learned actually from this session, that when the process of the global IGF was set, actually there were no regional initiatives, neither national ones, and so on. And maybe it's time to revisit or revise these processes to have more positive impact on regional and the national initiatives. The main goal from here is actually to convey messages from regional and national levels and needs to be expressed to the up level and the global IGF. Reporting is a very good actually mechanism. However, maybe what could be enhanced is to get benefit from these reports and to be reflected in the decisions of the MAG and in the schedule and the program of each IGF annual meetings and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm aware we're 5 minutes from a hard stop. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank the rapporteurs. I think we've delved into the contentious bits of the report. And to close, I want to hand over and let Peter sort of wrap it up and that tell you about sort of the taking stock session and how this will be reflected going forward.
Well, thank you very much for everyone's participation. I just want to share with you, I counted from the seniors list. We had the 5 regions, Arab IGF, like TLD, even if they didn't speak, but they show up, African IGF, Asia Pacific IGF, the Persian IGF, and 13 more between national initiatives or project of national initiatives represented here, which I believe it's really important, it's really rich, and I really appreciate the participation of everyone. Some of the participants also encourage the fact that we should have more and more national IGF sharing with us their experience and in some way facilitating between each other the exchange that some of you have mentioned that will be beneficial, not only between this IGF and the national regional IGF, but also could be between national IGF. The other fact that fortunately these rapporteurs did an excellent job synthesizing all the different hot topics or trendy topics that have been raised at your IGFs and during the last year or that are forecast for the coming month. The list also of potential mechanisms or ideas to facilitate the exchange between this event and your initiative also have been noted. And I will say that there was really interesting ideas that were shared, and we took note of them. Will be, as we mentioned at the beginning, taken to the taking stock session as part of the outcome of this meeting. I want also to invite you to start working on our next year meeting, because it's going to, as you know, to be a really important one, and we could start thinking about what have been the implication of the last 10 years of the IGF for the national and the regional IGF. It was just mentioned that when the IGF started, there was no regional and national IGF. It has become as one of the I will say one of the most important outcomes of the IGF process is the process that you have been living in your countries, in your regions, and that it will be great to show and to deliver that message in a global perspective that without the IGF, maybe the survival of your initiative will be jeopardized if we don't renew the mandate next year. So that's my invitation for thinking about starting working. We have gathered all your emails. We will try to trigger again the coordinating list. We have a regional also emailing list that we'll be using and try to explode in the better sense to convey some of the great ideas you have shared. Maybe some final word from Marilyn?
I have one point that I mentioned when we started, and I'd like to just mention it again. As all of us know, that we are in the second, we are in year 9 of the IGF. This is phase 2, and we're in the 4th year, getting ready to go into the 5th year. There is a document, a letter circulating among civil society and the private sector here, calling for positive endorsement of the extension of the IGF, and that will come up further with the MAG. The debate has been within the civil society and business group, ranging from some calling for a permanent extension to more practical understanding of how the UN system works, to just calling for an extension. But I think within the national and regional coordinators and initiatives, that concept of the extension of the IGF might be a worthwhile further thing for us to all think about as well, in terms of, is that something that your initiative is prepared to endorse or to support? I think endorse may be the wrong word, but to support.
Okay. So thank you very, very much to everyone, and hope you enjoyed the rest of the week. Thank you.